Chapter 542. This will be the greatest opportunity of your lives. Night fell. An Xin was temporarily staying in a monastery with Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai, where a fire blazed in the courtyard, its flickering light casting shadows on the walls. Tang Kai watched an Xin intently, her eyes filled with hostility, while an Xin admired the fate pen. Having used the fate pen more than once or twice, an Xin greatly enjoyed the vast power it contained. Unfortunately, after each use, her master would take it back, so she treasured the time she had with it and wanted to investigate why the pen was so formidable. As for Tang Kai's gaze, an Xin had noticed it long ago and could guess Tang Kai's thoughts, but she intentionally offered no explanation. Because it was fun, Tang Kai treasured elderly like a treasure, but an Xin felt that elderly was just so and nowhere near as formidable as her own master. Every time her master mentioned elderly, he would describe how elderly got beaten up, using him as a negative example. So how could she possibly like elderly? Thinking of this, the corners of Nzin's mouth couldn't help but lift. Seeing an Xin smile, Tang Kai grew even angrier, but she couldn't lash out. After all, an Xin had saved their lives. While meditating and healing, Li Xuanyu kept thinking about the name and Xin. Finally, she remembered, and opening her eyes, she looked towards an Xin and asked, "Are you Gu N's disciple?" Mentioning Gu In, the blurry face in her memory gradually became clear. It had been over 9,000 years since she left the Tai Tsang continent, and she had never returned. Her meeting with Li Ye was purely coincidental on an island, and Li Ye did not reveal that Gu In was the supporting Dao sword venerable. Li Xuanyu could not associate Gu In with the supporting Dao sword venerable either, since when she knew Gu In, he was just a medicine boy, and she had even helped him manage an introduction to take care of a cave mansion. Back then, Gu In had run around for a few spirit stones. Later, however, she had realized that Gu In was not simple and hid secrets, but she never thought of him in terms of the supporting Dao sword venerable. An Xin turned her head towards her and smiled brightly. "Yes, elderly, my master has mentioned you too. He said that when he was young, you helped him a lot." Hearing this, Li Xuanyu was sure she hadn't misheard, and a smile appeared on her face as she said reflectively, "I didn't really help him much, just lending a hand. How has he been doing lately?" An Xin replied, "He's doing well, don't worry. Could it be that he is also on this continent?" "No, that's not the case. No one knows where he has gone." An Xin shook her head. This wasn't her being secretive, but rather Gu In genuinely wanting to hide his whereabouts, not wanting to attract trouble, and she definitely couldn't cause trouble for Gu In. She was curious about the image of Gu In Li Xuanyu's mind, so she started to share the stories Gu In had told her, and Li Xuanyu also fell into reminiscence. Tang Kai was also captivated by the stories an Xin told and gradually forgot her jealousy. Hearing that Gu In was Li Ya's junior brother, Tang Kai grew even more interested, as she was very curious about everything related to Li Ye. But unfortunately, before she could learn more about Li Ye, she had parted ways with him. The stories an Xin told were those Gu In had shared with her. They might have seemed mundane, but on such a night, they brought Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai a sense of warmth and a touch of happiness. In Li Xuanyu's mind, Gu In also gradually became clearer, and the old memories surfaced. Remembering how reserved Gu In had been in front of her, a smile also appeared on her face. Over 9,000 years had passed, and many old acquaintances were buried in the earth, but Gu In was still alive, and she was genuinely happy and surprised that Gu In could teach such a disciple. A millennium passes just like a flicker in the human world. 9,000 years brought about such great changes. When an Xin finished speaking, Tang Kai curiously asked, "What is Gu In's cultivation level now?" An Xin glanced at her, smiling radiantly. "How would I know? See this pen? This is his magical treasure." While speaking, an Xin raised the fate pen in her hand. Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai both looked towards the fate pen in Nzin's hand, unable to forget the sight of an Xin wielding the pen to eradicate a group of demons. Those black crows were no ordinary creatures. Even a loose immortal hit by them would be drained of all their blood essence. Just as an Xin was showing off the fate pin, Guin, who was far away in the Taoist field of the beginningless, lay reading a book while listening to their conversation. Senior sisterly, it really has been many years. Guin lay on a chair, a book in his hands, the corners of his mouth slightly upturned. That Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai were able to come to the Nine-Spirit Continent was due to his guidance, using celestial signs to bring them to the Nine-Spirit Continent coincidentally. And along the way, their survival from numerous brushes with death also had Gu An's secret assistance. Back then, Li Xuanyu indeed had helped Guin, so if he could lend a hand with just a simple effort, he naturally would not be stingy. Helping Li Xuanyu was also for Li Ya's sake. With Li Yason's sister and future wife in danger, how could he not rescue them? The reason he led the two women to the Nine-Spirit Continent was because a great catastrophe was about to come outside, and only on the Nine-Spirit Continent would they be completely safe. Guin closed his book and shut his eyes, lazily saying, "After you finish your act, I take the stage, and the heroes of the world take turns. But who can really see through how deep the waters of this world are? Celestial Spirit God, I look forward to clashing with you." His voice echoed only within the room. He was speaking to himself. Amidst the mountains, Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai stood on a slope, looking at the magnificent scene ahead. Both women remained silent. Sir, the novel Fire. NT website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Following their gaze, in front of the mountains appeared a gigantic chasm, stretching to the ends of heaven and earth. The mountains on either side, too, had been pierced, as if a dragon comparable in size to the mountains had rolled over them, leaving behind this broken landscape. An Xin descended from the sky, casually playing with the fate pen. She chuckled, "Celestial and earthly immortals are just this, huh?" Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai had been on the Nine-Spirit Continent for several months, and today the mastermind who had been pursuing them had finally come to kill them. After a round of negotiations, an Xin, unable to stand the other side's ranting, chose to eradicate them. Tang Kai opened her mouth, but found herself unable to speak. The supreme great power that was the cause of her despair, just like that, was dead. Li Xuanyu looked at the fate pen with a complex expression in her eyes. Is Gu An's cultivation level now at least higher than the heaven and earth flying immortal realm? She couldn't understand. She felt that her own adventures were numerous, and in her view, only Li Ya's growth rate was faster than hers. In fact, she always believed she was second to none. But what she witnessed today overturned her understanding. She felt that her peers couldn't possibly possess such power, let alone slaughtering celestial and earthly immortals. Even killing wandering immortals seemed unbelievable. An Xin looked at them and smiled. "Settle down in the Nine-Spirit Continent. It will change your lives. I want to accompany you further." With that, she turned and walked away, but after a few steps, she stopped again. "Let me remind you once more, stay here. This will be the greatest opportunity of your lives. If you insist on leaving, you will regret it for the rest of your lives." An Xin leaped up, transforming into a streak of light and disappearing into the horizon. Tang Kai couldn't help but look at Li Xuanyu and asked, "What should we do? Listen to her?" Li Xuanyu looked in the direction an Xin had left and asked, "Do you want to have cultivation like hers, to stand shoulder to shoulder with Liya in the future, rather than always chasing behind him?" These words stunned Tang Kai. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know, report, so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 543, The Descent of the Supreme Demon Realm in the Depths of the Cosmos. Countless meteorites, ablaze with fiery flames, tore through the great Taos mists, rushing unstoppably in the same direction, creating a sight of unparalleled grandeur. The appearance of this group of meteorites alarmed the mighty beings within the universe, as countless divine senses reached out toward them. Upon an unmoving meteorite, Zia from Human World Peak was meditating in this area. He suddenly opened his eyes and was immediately startled by the swarm of meteorites approaching from the depths of the universe. He could feel the powerful forces contained within those meteorites, which even instinctively made him feel fearful. He immediately cast a spell to form a barrier, concealing himself. Soon, meteorites skimmed over him, their terrifying force causing the meteorite beneath him to tremble. Is that Zia's pupils suddenly narrowed, and he saw a figure standing on one of the meteorites. Could this be a force? Looking in the direction they were flying, Zia's expression darkened. That direction was precisely toward the celestial spirit great world. Thinking about the changes in the celestial spirit great world over the years, Zia's heart filled with worry. He always felt that the tribulation of the celestial spirit great world was not due to internal factors. It seemed that some supremely powerful entity was manipulating everything. The death of young Immortal Emperor was the best proof. After all the meteorites disappeared into the darkness, Zia hesitated for a moment, then finally flew in the opposite direction. He chose to preserve himself. At the same time, in the celestial spirit great world, beings of high realm also sensed the threat from beyond heaven. In the third Medicine Valley, Long Jun stood on the cliff, gazing up at the celestial vault, his expression serene. Candlestar appeared beside him and whispered, "It's the people from the Supreme Demon Realm. I sense the aura of the Supreme Demon Emperor, their current leader." "Such a vast scheme," Long Jun murmured. "They want to eliminate every thorn in their side. The destiny of the heavenly Tao has changed." "Changed? What do you mean?" Candlestar asked, confused. Long Jun answered, "The future I saw has already altered. At the very least, the Supreme Demon Realm should not have appeared." Hearing this, Candlestar furrowed his brows. In his eyes, Long Jun's cultivation level was profound. He could traverse from the past to the present, and his Tao practice might not be inferior to the Silent Destruction God Emperor. At least the Silent Destruction God Emperor did not possess such a capability to cross through antiquity and the present. Facing the anomalies in the heavenly Tao, what should we do? Candlestar asked. He had already bet everything on Long Qing, and there was no turning back. And since Long Jun was Long Qing's ancestor, the two stood on the same side. He now greatly trusted Long Jun, continued to lie low, and wait for that young one to master the celestial dragon Dharma aspect, answered Long Jun, his voice calm. Candlestar then inquired, "Should we start preparing a concubine for him?" "It can begin now. After all, I cannot see the upcoming situation clearly either. It's better to be prepared earlier." "Good. I will start the selection process." At the boundless mountain range, Leah and Sword Annihilation Ancestor reached the edge of the forest, looking out over the magnificent mountains ahead. Leah turned and looked at Sword Annihilation Ancestor, asking, "Master, did you feel it?" Sword Annihilation Ancestor furrowed his brows tightly and replied, "It's the aura of the Supreme Demon Realm. Their goal is to devour great heaven and earth, and now they dare set their sights on the celestial spirit great world. There must be something fishy behind this. The Supreme Demon Realm? Are they formidable?" Leah asked curiously. Sword Annihilation Ancestor began to describe the Supreme Demon Realm. The Supreme Demon Realm was born before the shattering of the celestial spirit great world. They once were an overlord-level power in a great world. After the shattering of the great world, they founded the Supreme Demon Realm, building various demon cities to invade the great heaven and earth, refining magical treasures with the power of the great world, and transforming the blood sacrifices of all living beings into their own Tao practice. Even the heavenly demon within the silent extinction domain seems negligible compared to the Supreme Demon Realm. Listening to the power and style of the Supreme Demon Realm, Leo also felt worried. Such demon race forces descending upon the celestial spirit great world were definitely not benevolent. Sword Annihilation Ancestor looked at Leah and said, "I will pass on to you one last divine skill. After this, I truly have to leave." The two had parted several times, and each time Leah faced peril, Sword Annihilation Ancestor always couldn't help but intervene. This time, Sword Annihilation Ancestor spoke earnestly, making Leah feel his determination. Leah couldn't help but ask, "Master, where are you going?" "To the place from whence I came," Sword Annihilation Ancestor answered calmly. What about the cause and effect you spoke of earlier? How should I handle it? Hearing Leah mention the conditions of their discipleship, Sword Annihilation Ancestor deeply gazed at him and said, do not deliberately think about it. As you grow stronger, the cause and effect of your master will naturally involve you. Remember, this divine skill must not be used unless it's a matter of life and death. Seeing his master so serious, Leah could only nod, acknowledging his words. His heart, however, was filled with anticipation. The Supreme Demon Realm. He wanted to see how powerful the Supreme Demon Realm was, what made it capable of frightening his master away. Boom! Heaven and earth trembled, startling everyone within the Taoist field of the beginningless. They gathered in Gu An's courtyard to discuss the unusual disturbances in heaven and earth. They could see many meteors from outer heaven falling on the horizon, a magnificent sight, followed by a nearly world-ending, terrifying pressure. Sir, the novel fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Is this demonic chi? Could it be another invasion by the heavenly demon? It feels different from the aura of the heavenly demon, such a heavy scent of blood. I wonder if there are others besides our master and young immortal emperor who can save this world from continuous trials. There are countless strong beings in the world, but few who dare shoulder the safety of all living beings. While they were discussing worldly affairs, the door opened and Guin walked out from inside the house. Everyone immediately turned and greeted him. Guin surveyed them and asked, how about you all go out and save the world? As soon as he said this, everyone felt awkward, and Sheng Tian and Shen Chuan, who had been very vocal earlier, were blushing. Of course, Blood Prison Great Saint, who had been the loudest, just grinned shamelessly. Shun Jun was also snickering. She hadn't joined the discussion, so she didn't feel embarrassed. Go back to your cultivations. The calamity outside won't affect the dojo. With these words, Guin walked towards the courtyard gate. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. The aura from the Supreme Demon Realm was indeed too strong. Even while staying inside the dojo, they instinctively felt fear, making it difficult to cultivate peacefully. Hearing Gu An's words, they completely let go of their worries. The oppression from the Supreme Demon Realm was far less than their trust in Gu, and Shun Jun quickly caught up with Gu An's steps. After leaving the courtyard, they walked into the forest along the mountain path. Gu An's courtyard was located at the mountain's peak. The flowers and grass were lush, and the trees were tall. Walking among the trees, the speckled sunlight that fell looked so serene and mystical. If I paint the demons outside right now, will it cause trouble? Shenzhen stepped forward, walking shoulder to shoulder with Guin, and asked softly. Guin smiled and said, you're scared too? Just paint if you want to. Hearing this, Shenzhen's face lit up with a smile. She curiously asked, such terrifying demonic chi doesn't intimidate you? What kind of being is worthy of being your opponent? A breeze blew through the forest, cooling Gu An's face. My opponent has already appeared. Gu An's statement spiked Shun Zhan's curiosity. Unfortunately, her cultivation level was too low. In the previous disasters of a human world, she hadn't seen those world-shaking demonic figures. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know, report, so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 544. Neither God nor demon dark clouds churned, and thunder rumbled incessantly as the vast ocean rose in angry waves, and heavy rain scattered with the wind. Amid those alarming surges, one could vaguely make out the shocking sight of corpses. Looking into the distance, one could see a fierce battle unfolding between the celestial sea. Countless cultivators besieged a demon tens of thousands of feet tall. The demon, human in form, was covered in black fur, dressed in black armor, and wore a horned iron helmet, resembling a war god from the demon realm. Wielding a terrifying greatsword, it could cleave the sea and slash the heavens with absolute, tyrannical might. Cultivators' bodies continuously fell, crashing into the gloomy sea and quickly being dispersed by the churning water. Miles away at the edge of the nine-spirit continent, Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai stood on a cliff, watching the battle from afar. Waves splashed against the shore, wetting their dresses, but they paid it no mind. How terrifying this demon! Are such demons rampant all over the world? Tang Kai couldn't help but look at Li Xuanyu, exclaiming in awe. Several days ago, numerous meteors from outer heaven had descended, shaking the earth, and not long after, the human world faced a catastrophe. Only a few days had passed, and demons from outer heaven threatened nine-spirit continent. Li Xuanyu replied, "The demonic chi from outside is indeed heavy. No wonder an XN wanted us to stay." Tang Kai couldn't help but ask, "Sister, you don't think Liu will get into trouble, do you? With his temperament, he's sure to dive right into the thick of it. I'm really afraid he might get seriously injured again." "Don't worry, he has his own fortune. His life is much harder than either of ours." Li Xuanyu shook her head slightly, and, saying so, she turned to leave. Tang Kai took one more look at the distant battle at the edge of the sea, then followed Li Xuanyu's steps. She was curious about the demon's cultivation level, but unfortunately, Li Xuanyu couldn't see through it either. Their experiences were but a microcosm of the world. Every continent and sea was plagued by demons from the supreme demon realm, with countless beings meeting tragic deaths every day. The skies of the human world darkened, signaling a tribulation sweeping across the entire great heaven and earth. The supreme demon realm came only to slaughter. In a sacred domain within a palace, 7 figures gathered, staring at the throne of the silent destruction god emperor in silence for a long time. One of the women broke the silence. "The master hasn't come back yet. Could something have happened?" At these words, the faces of the other 6 turned grim. The silent destruction god emperor had been missing for many years. They had not been worried at first, but now with the attack of the supreme demon realm and the god emperor's absence, they couldn't help but be concerned. The supreme demon realm has always hidden in the shadows. Now that they have launched a large-scale invasion of the celestial spirit great world, I fear someone has been guiding them from behind, and that person is likely that one. A middle-aged man inhaled deeply and spoke gravely. He didn't specify who that one was, but everyone understood. The celestial spirit god, the supreme existence of this great thousand world. Once again, the hall fell into silence. Even with the lowest among them being profound yuan-free immortals, the mere thought of the celestial spirit god sent chills down their spines, quelling any thoughts of rebellion or scheming. Just then, the palace began to tremble, and the candles flickered violently, threatening to go out at any moment. All 7 turned to look towards the doorway. Without the holy court, the celestial court appears stronger, yet it seems to have lost its former keen edge. A cold voice came from outside the hall, like a muffled thunder that echoed throughout the sacred domain, audible to all beings within the holy court. The 7 in the hall looked at one another again, none volunteering to speak first. More than the safety of the holy court, they wanted to know where the silent destruction god emperor had gone. They didn't even consider the possibility of the emperor being dead. In their minds, the silent destruction god emperor was an immortal being. If a power such as the Holy Court could come under attack from the supreme demon realm, what about other sects? The major sects of the Tai Tsang continent also faced tribulations. The supreme sect, having lost the protection of the supporting Tao sword venerable for over 9,000 years, was once again drawn into the defense battle. Spring gave way to autumn, and 300 years passed in the blink of an eye. The human world entered a bizarre state where demons roamed freely, and it was difficult to distinguish between human and ghost. All living beings were living in constant fear. On the Tai Tsang continent, within the North Sea mountain ridge, profound mystery sat in front of the pill furnace in the courtyard, looking up at the overcast clouds, his face full of worry. He turned his head to look at the mountain god on the eaves and asked, "Mountain god, is there no one in this world who can drive out the supreme demon realm?" 300 years had passed, and the name of the supreme demon realm had spread far and wide. Everyone knew that the evil demons ravaging the human world came from the supreme demon realm. The Immortal dynasty had fallen, the holy court had been slaughtered by the supreme demon realm, and the entire world was shrouded in their darkness, with clouds so dense that hope was obscured. Although profound mystery lived in seclusion in the North Sea mountain ridge, occasionally cultivators and demons would pass by, which allowed him to stay informed of major events in the world. Now, even the Tai-Tassan continent was plagued by minions of the supreme demon realm. The powerful demons of the supreme demon realm, once they descended into the human world, recruited many minions. They were also able to nurture more demons, swiftly expanding the influence of the supreme demon realm to cover the entire world. "Of course there is," Guin casually replied while sitting on the eaves, whittling a bamboo stick. "Otherwise, there would be no living creatures left in the human world by now." With the invasion of the supreme demon realm, although the human world suffered greatly, it also gave birth to numerous heroes. Now, many great cultivators were preparing to besiege the main city established by the supreme demon realm in the human world, forcing the supreme demon realm on the defensive. CTH Novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Guin was but a pawn to the supreme demon realm. The celestial spirit god sought to use the power of the supreme demon realm to force out the heaven and earth Tao fruit. It seemed that the celestial spirit god could not personally annihilate all living beings. It was as though some force in the unseen depths was restraining the celestial spirit god, which made Guin even more curious about the celestial court that lurked behind the celestial spirit god. What sort of order did the celestial court have, and how were its classes of strength and weakness divided? After hearing this, the worry and profound mystery's eyes faded. Having secluded himself in the mountains for over 9,000 years, he too had his own insights. He had felt compassion for the suffering of passers-by, but as time went on, he realized that he couldn't change anything. Moreover, suffering would not vanish. People would always suffer, and the difference lay in whether or not he could see it. A high-pitched dragon's roar echoed between heaven and earth. Profound Mystery looked up and saw a dragon tail appearing in the cloudy sky, twisting like a mountain range, a magnificent sight to behold. This dragon had green scales, yet radiated golden light. Filled with curiosity, Profound Mystery asked, "Is this being a god or a demon?" Since the descent of the supreme demon realm, he had occasionally seen celestial beasts appearing, including dragons. But this particular dragon tail gave him a feeling there was an indescribable divinity present. Guin, wearing a mask, looked up and said, "Neither god nor demon, merely a lost soul." That was not a true dragon, but someone's Dharma aspect. Guin was somewhat curious as well. Could there truly be such a prodigy within the Long clan? This individual was neither Long Xin nor Long Ya. Guin's gaze stretched out toward the third medicine valley of the Supreme Sect. In Long Qing's practice of the Celestial Dragon technique, there had been progress. Within Long Jun's domain, he had condensed 12 Dharma aspects, one of which was wrapped by a golden dragon, its aura towering. A lost soul. Profound Mystery's curiosity grew, and he stared intently at that dragon tail. At that moment, not only he, but creatures across the continent were looking up at that dragon tail. Mortal spirits even thought a true dragon had descended to exterminate demons for them. More and more mortal spirits knelt down, kowtowing towards the dragon tail, crying out and praying. Inside Long Jun's domain, it appeared no different from the surrounding cliffs of the Third Medicine Valley, but in reality, they were in an entirely separate space. Long Qing opened his eyes and turned his head to look, and he was suddenly taken aback. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 545 Heavenly Tao Peak, Celestial Emperor. Who is he? As he gazed at the Dharma aspect that was enveloping the golden dragon, Long Qing asked Long Jun. Long Jun looked at the golden dragon Dharma aspect, his expression quite complex, and said, "He is the previous you, your ancestor. Like you, he's a remnant of the Long clan. I crossed through the years to assist him. He failed, but not before leaving a lineage for the Long clan, offering a glimmer of hope." Long Qing hadn't expected that Long Jun had sought out other ancestors before. He realized he was not the most unique. "Can you tell me a story?" Long Qing asked, curious to learn about the life of each Dharma aspect he managed to manifest. Long Jun, although he lived in the distant past, had the ability to see the lives of all his descendants. This time, he didn't hold back and began to recount the life story of this member of the Long clan. Long Mang, born without parents or even the protection of servants left by his family, was abandoned in the Great Thousand World and was taken in by a cultivator from a sect. The first half of his life was relatively stable until he awakened the bloodline of the Long clan, which drew the attention of the battle court. His master was turned to ash, his wife and children were slaughtered, and his fellow sect members were almost entirely massacred. Had Long Jun not intervened in time, the lineage of the Long clan would have ended with Long Mang. After rescuing Long Mang, Long Jun began to teach him the secret techniques of the Long clan. During his cultivation, Long Mang developed his own understanding of the celestial dragon Dharma aspect. The golden dragon showcased by the Long Mang Dharma aspect was a manifestation of will, allowing him to be more focused and powerful in battle. Once, Long Mang had brought boundless hope to Long Jun. Unfortunately, Long Mang still met his end at the hands of the silent destruction god Emperor, and his grandson even fell victim to the Emperor's possession. The silent destruction god Emperor, always him. What exactly is his relation to the battle court? Why does he continuously possess us? Long Qing asked indignantly, his eyes brimming with murderous intent. Long Jun replied, "He has no direct connection to the battle court, but he covets the bloodline talent of the Long clan. Perhaps he has reached his own limits and can ascend no further." Long Qing took in a deep breath, his fists clenched tightly, and said, "I hope I get the chance to kill him with my own hands in this life." Long Jun remained silent, offering no further conversation. Then, Long Qing closed his eyes and continued to cultivate the celestial dragon Dharma aspect. Since the advent of the supreme demon realm, he had felt a sense of crisis. Setting aside the vast power of the supreme sect, he began to dedicate himself entirely to mastering the celestial dragon Dharma aspect. Hearing of Long Mang's deeds, Long Qing's resolve grew even stronger. He had to master the celestial dragon Dharma aspect. He had to eradicate the battle court. He had to slay the silent destruction god Emperor, and he had to resolve the fate of the Long clan. Far away at the mountain god temple, Guan stood up after listening to Long Mang's story. He bid farewell to profound, mysterious Junren and then vanished from the eaves. Afterward, Guan spent half a day at Immortal Seeking Island before leisurely returning to the Taoist field of the beginningless. The mischief of demons had made the atmosphere on Immortal Seeking Island even tenser. The number of guards doubled, ready to fend off any attacks by evil demons at a moment's notice. As Guan walked through the forest, he appeared to be leisurely strolling, but in reality, he was calculating the destiny of heaven and earth. The final battle between him and the celestial spirit god was drawing closer. Once the supreme demon realm lures out the heaven and earth Tao fruit, an era that had lasted nearly 10,000 years would come to an end. If Guan didn't act, the celestial spirit great world would certainly be obliterated. Regardless of how many great cultivators there were in the world, or how high the talent of the prodigies, none would matter in the face of the celestial spirit god. Guan looked at his attribute panel. His lifespan had reached over 860 billion years. He was full of confidence. Compared to the celestial spirit gods, he was now more curious about the existence that had created the celestial spirit great world and where it was hiding. After the arrival of the supreme demon realm, the celestial Tao destiny of the great heaven and earth started to dissipate, gaining a void and ethereal destiny, similar to that of heaven and earth, yet with an added vitality belonging to living beings. Both the celestial Tao golden core and the heaven and earth Tao fruit still existed, proving that the existence which had pioneered the celestial spirit great world had not completely perished. It was merely waiting for the opportunity to resurrect. Whether the celestial Tao light layer that enveloped the great heaven and earth was for protection or restraint would soon reveal its answer. Late at night, a demon cloud shrouded the sky, preventing living beings on earth from seeing a single star. Within a valley surrounded by mountains, Zhu Shi meditated by the lake, her gaze lost in the shimmering water surface. The immortal seeker approached her, gathered up his robe, and sat down on the ground. "Are you afraid?" the immortal seeker asked softly, looking at the lake. Zhu Shi replied, "Of course I'm afraid. But if faced with the annihilation of heaven and earth, the collapse of the universe, I have no choice but to draw my sword against him." The immortal seeker smiled and said, "The situation in the world is becoming increasingly chaotic. The battle court, profound abyss, supreme demon realm, river of sword Tao, too many powers are vying for advantage. The more chaotic it is, the better. He is too arrogant, believing that his abilities are sufficient to suppress everything in the great thousand world." His tone carried a hint of mockery. Hearing this, Zhu Shi turned to look at him and asked, "Where exactly is the heaven and earth Tao fruit hidden, and when will it appear?" She had made all the preparations she could, just waiting for the heaven and earth Tao fruit to emerge. Sir, the novel_fire. At website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Its appearance depends on you, the immortal seeker said leisurely. When this world gives birth to its own profound yuan-free immortal, the heaven and earth Tao fruit will appear. You can enter the Taoist Zhangzizai immortal realm at any time. Plus, with the divine skills I've passed on to you, even if you only step into the role of profound yuan-free immortal briefly, the heaven and earth Tao fruit will reveal itself. Whether it is the great world or a smaller one, they all have their own carrying limits. This shattered world can only sustain one profound yuan-free immortal. After hearing this, Zhu Shi furrowed her brows, falling into hesitation. The immortal seeker continued, "Shangtan, do you know who the being at the pinnacle of the heavenly Tao, who commands the immortal gods, is? Who is it?" "Such a being is known as the Celestial Emperor. To become the Celestial Emperor, one must endure 129,600 red dust reincarnation tribulations. The red dust reincarnation tribulation is different from the reincarnation tribulation you know of. No matter how many times you reincarnate, you must act as a savior to truly overcome one red dust reincarnation tribulation. To become the savior, you must wait for periods like the present." Zhu Zai's eyes widened upon hearing this. 129,600 red dust reincarnation tribulations. She couldn't fathom the lengthy hardships one would have to endure for so long. The immortal seeker said in a thought-provoking tone, "The predicament you are facing now may seem irreversible, but that exalted celestial emperor had to face 129,600 such crises to achieve enlightenment. Moreover, the crisis you face is far less severe because you have help and he did not. He had to start as a mortal, continuously breaking his own celestial mandate, only then capable of commanding the heavenly Tao. Your destiny pattern is unparalleled, and you have a heart aspiring to become the strongest, but you must realize that the path to being the mightiest is inevitably fraught with difficulties and requires unstoppable progress." Zhu Shi took a deep breath, and her eyes gradually became resolute. She was unsure of how powerful the Celestial Emperor was, but she knew she first had to overcome the hurdle of the celestial spirit gods. Even if it means death, I have to fight, especially when there's no way back. The immortal seeker's tone was firm, as if he, too, was speaking to himself. Search the Novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 546. Master, what is the profound yuan-free immortal? In the autumn season, the forest within the Taoist field of the beginningless gradually turned yellow and withered. Guan was instructing an Xin in her cultivation by a small river. The fairy, who appeared unfathomably profound in the eyes of Qinkuan's sect disciples, was now wearing a face full of distress, unable to grasp Guan's words. And all at once, an Xin felt ashamed. When she had been instructing the Qinkuan sect disciples, encountering those with dull spiritual root qualifications, she couldn't help feeling somewhat irritated. Yet looking at her master, facing the difficult task of teaching her, he remained composed and even kept a smile on his face. She felt that her own path was still long. Little did she know, the reason why Guan was smiling was that Leo was taking a beating again. While others teamed up to combat the evil demons from the Supreme Demon Realm, he alone was being pursued by a group of evil demons. Even though Leo was being chased, he did not lose his verbal edge. Every time he was about to be caught, he would burst forth with even stronger power to break out of the encirclement. He was excited, thinking that he had broken through the limit of his physical body, undergoing a transformation amidst the battle. Guan heard his heart's voice and was even more amused. "Oh, senior brother, your potential is my doing." As Guan thought this, he turned to an Xin and said, "If you can't figure it out, then take your time. It's meaningless to think about other useless matters instead of focusing on enlightenment." Upon hearing this, an Xin nodded earnestly. She stopped her wild thoughts and began to review the previous Tao teachings with concentration. Guan noticed her refocused mind and felt satisfied with her attitude. Besides Leah, other old acquaintances were also more or less caught in trouble. In the current times, the scramble for opportunities inevitably involved combat and killing. What Guan was most concerned about, however, was Zhu Shi. Zhu Shi had already stepped into the realm of Taoist Zhangzhizai Immortal, his body exuding the aura of reincarnation, clearly having regained his destiny pattern from his previous life as a saint of Shangtian. It's worth mentioning that Zhu Shi did not go to outer heaven for his breakthrough. They were hidden in an ancient secret realm, and his breakthrough had caused quite a stir, covering the entire celestial spirit great world. However, since the Supreme Demon Realm was causing chaos, the various sects did not fully mobilize to investigate the truth. Zhu Shi, who had reached the realm of Taoist Zhangzhizai Immortal, was preparing to impact an even higher realm. Profound Yuan-free Immortal. Guan was curious about the immortal seeker. Although he was a reincarnated being, his cultivation level was not strong in this life. How was he using other forces to help Zhu Shi break through by force? This power reminded Gu and of the aura of the god of destruction. The god of destruction was also a god of the celestial court. In Black Profound Emperor's memories, the aura of the god of destruction was different from that of the celestial spirit god, but it was nonetheless related to the celestial Tao aura. The power that the immortal seeker borrowed was similar to that of the god of destruction, though there were also differences. Guan sensed carefully and felt that this power might be at the same level as the god of destruction and the celestial spirit god. Compared with the three, none was significantly stronger than the others. Interesting, it seems that there's some cause and effect contradiction within the celestial court itself. While observing the world, Guan repeated his teachings. The content an Xin had already memorized, but the reason he repeated it was that he infused his Tao intent into his voice, allowing the Tao listener to have new realizations with each listening of the same content. And Zen's spiritual root qualification was mediocre, but her comprehension was not bad. For her to have come this far, Guan had expended quite a bit of effort just teaching the Tao. Thankfully, it looked to be worth it. Let's see what kind of existence it is that has allowed the celestial spirit god to hold on until now. Guan looked at an exant, thinking thus in his heart. In the following autumn, the nine-spirit continent remained relatively calm, but the Taitsong continent and other places around the world suffered even more intense shocks. The supreme demon realm seemed to sense something and became increasingly manic. All over the world, the multitude of living beings felt a sense of oppression. The world isn't really about to end, is it? At dusk, LV stood beside Guan, looking into the distance with him. Ia the Novel Fire. Net asterisk website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. LV face was full of worry, because he felt an oppressive aura emanating from outside the dojo, causing all things between heaven and earth to tremble. Even the spiritual energy seemed restless and uneasy. The reason he could sense the situation outside the dojo was because Guan specifically allowed him to feel it. To be precise, he allowed everyone inside the dojo to feel it. At such a time, it is necessary to make the people in the dojo aware, so they would cherish what they have. Perhaps it truly might be the end of the world. Guan said softly, alarming LV who looked at him in fear. LV asked, if that is so, what about us? With Guan's abilities, he could surely escape to outer heaven, so why choose to seclude in the celestial spirit great world? This catastrophe will lead to the annihilation of all beings, followed by the shattering of heaven and earth, and even the universe will collapse. Guan began to describe the future, his voice painting one solemn scene after another in LV mind, causing his pupils to constrict. After he finished speaking, LV dully asked, why would this happen? Who caused all this? The nature of heaven and earth itself? Or the heavenly Tao? Thousands of years ago, the concept of the heavenly Tao spread throughout the land, making all living beings aware of its existence. In the obscurity, it is the heavenly Tao that controls everything. Destiny, reincarnation all lie within the heavenly Tao. Study the great Tao, follow the heavenly Tao. Perhaps it is the immortal gods that people admire who are dissatisfied with our world, and soon you will see the truth for yourself, Guan said with profound meaning. LV subconsciously asked, how soon is soon? As soon as the words fell, the ground trembled, and a vast oppressive force descended, enveloping all things between heaven and earth. LV was immediately intimidated by this force. His eyes widened, showing an expression of utter disbelief. At this moment, a series of figures appeared out of nowhere behind them. It was an Xan, Shunjun, and others. They looked toward Guan nervously. The sudden oppressive force was truly frightening, prompting them to instinctively seek out Guan did not turn around. He looked into the distance and said, take a good look. Recognize the true nature of this world. One day, you'll have to face such despair on your own. Hearing this, an Xin was about to speak when a thunderous boom shook heaven and earth. Guan waved his sleeve, and a light screen appeared in front of them, reflecting a vast continent. At this moment, the continent was splitting apart, dust rising with grand momentum. If one looked closely, amidst the spectacular surging tide, tendrils appeared as if something, a giant demon, was about to break through the soil. What is that? Shinjin couldn't help but ask. No one answered her, and Guan did not explain, but let them continue to watch. As more and more dust arose on the continent, the view on the light screen zoomed out, showing more of the sea areas, while the continent was submerged by the surging waves. Soon, the expressions of an Xin and others began to change, some even with their mouths wide open in shock, as if a mortal had seen a ghost. They saw a huge round fruit rising within the mighty surging tide, its surface covered in golden Tao patterns. It was larger than the continent, rising continuously, growing larger and larger. Chun Chuan turned his head to another direction, his eyes wide as he pointed and said in astonishment, "Look over there quickly." Everyone turned to look and saw a gigantic object appearing on the horizon. the same mysterious giant fruit from the light screen. That is the heaven and earth Tao fruit, the essence of heaven and earth itself. Without it, there would be no heaven and earth, nor would there be all things within heaven and earth, Guin introduced. Without waiting for anyone to ask, he continued, someone has reached the level of profound yuan-free immortal, prompting the heaven and earth Tao fruit to appear. Profound yuan-free immortal? Blood Prison Great Saint asked impatiently. Master, what is a profound yuan-free immortal? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 547. The Sky is Falling After Nirvana. The stages are Loose Immortal, Wandering Immortal, Celestial and Earthly Immortals, Carefree Primordial Immortal, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma, Tao Void Profound Immortal, Divine Thought True Immortal, and Free Immortal. Guin's voice floated towards everyone, their eyes widened in awe. CTH Novel Ire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Guin, fearing they hadn't understood clearly enough, added, although Taoist Zongzai Immortal and Profound Yuan-Free Immortal are still considered free immortals, the gap between each level far surpasses the 9 heavens of the immortal path. Once one reaches Taoist Zongzai Immortal, they will cultivate a Tao fruit, the so-called Tao fruit. At this point, he stopped and turned his head to look towards the mysterious giant fruit on the horizon. Tao fruit. Chun Chuan couldn't help but ask, Master, could this heaven and earth Tao fruit possibly be a cultivator's Tao fruit? The others all looked at Guin, extremely tense, awaiting his answer. Guin replied, yes, the heaven and earth Tao fruit is indeed a cultivator's Tao fruit, and the catastrophe of heaven and earth is brought by the enemies who slew him. Everyone was shocked upon hearing this, turning to look at the heaven and earth Tao fruit that was still growing, feeling more powerless than ever. How many years of cultivation would it take to reach such heights? Yet such a being could still be killed. They couldn't fathom what the entity capable of slaying the creator of heaven and earth would be like. But they knew one thing. The sky was falling. Shenzhen looked at the heaven and earth Tao fruit with a strong urge to paint it down, and she instantly disappeared from the spot. Xin looked at Guin with a hesitant face and asked, Master, the pressure before the appearance of the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Why do I feel like I've encountered it before? Upon her words, the others looked at Xin in surprise. Had she also met a profound yuan-free immortal? Guin glanced at Xin, his eyes showing a touch of satisfaction. He casually answered, Indeed you have. Her name is Zhu Shi, who is also the Saint Heaven reincarnation. Saint Heaven reincarnation. Celestial demon child's eyes lit up with excitement as she asked, Is it the Lord of the Holy Court? Hearing Guin affirm with a everyone grew even more excited and began to discuss the legend of Saint Heaven. Guin said no more, vanishing into thin air, leaving the rest of the experience for them to feel for themselves. As the heaven and earth Tao fruit emerged, all sects across the world were alarmed, and one great cultivator after another flew towards the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Evenly erode the 9 extremes, Sacred Heart soared there. From afar, he looked at the heaven and earth Tao fruit, incapable of reflecting the whole fruit in his pupils, while divine exotic immortal spirit stood on his shoulder, equally showing a face of disbelief. What is that? Divine exotic immortal spirit asked with a trembling voice, witnessing the heaven and earth Tao fruit and instinctively feeling fear. The enormity of the heaven and earth Tao fruit shook all living beings' sight. In the face of such creation, beings only felt reverence, not daring any disrespect. Leah also felt the pressure, and his flying speed began to slow. Reason told him that this was not something he could snatch, but another voice in his heart urged him to seize this supreme opportunity. As Leah hesitated, figures swept overhead, moving with great speed. Seeing so many fearless individuals, Leah felt greater courage welling up inside him. There's strength in numbers. Maybe he would be the one to seize it. Leah gritted his teeth and immediately accelerated forward. The enormous and spectacular heaven and earth Tao fruit hovered above the land and vast sea, with Zhu Shi and Immortal Seeker standing at the top of the heaven and earth Tao fruit, looking up into the dazzling starry sky. The celestial Tao light layer that enveloped the celestial spirit great world had become thin, as if it would completely disappear at any moment. Zhu Shi changed into a golden robe that clung to her body, her long hair coiled under a phoenix crown, with two golden dragons on her shoulders and a crimson halo floating behind her. At this moment, she exuded an air of supreme dominance, her brows revealing a chilling disdain for all living beings. Lord of the Holy Court, Shangtian, profound Yuan, free immortal. The Immortal Seeker looked up and sighed. There are just too many fools who can't see. As his voice fell, a huge black hole appeared in the starry sky above, and blood-red waves of air surged out, writhing like tentacles, horrifying and terrible. Who would have thought that the celestial spirit great world could give birth to the profound Yuan free immortal during the shattered era? An authoritative voice echoed between heaven and earth, so that all creatures could hear. Zhu Shi did not look up, but instead gazed down at the heaven and earth Tao fruit below. Each golden rune glowed with a light unique to it, appearing mysterious. The Immortal Seeker whispered, "The Supreme Demon Emperor from the Supreme Demon Realm has arrived. If you want to merge the heaven and earth Tao fruit, you might have to deal with him first." As his voice fell, black holes of various sizes appeared from all directions, terrible auras spilling out from them. Their converging might made heaven and earth tremble. Zhu Shi did not raise her eyes. She simply uttered one word. "Good." Boom, boom. The palace trembled, and Jiang Qiong, sitting at the highest seat, furrowed her brows. Her gaze turned to the palace doors outside, where the sky was dark, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. Fierce winds ravaged the forests, and in the far distance, at the edge of the sky, one could vaguely see a terrifying behemoth. Heaven and earth Tao fruit. Looking at the heaven and earth Tao fruit, Jiang Qiong felt very uneasy. She always had the feeling of facing the apocalypse, as if it was the last day of heaven and earth. At that moment, a female cultivator swiftly flew into the hall, landing before the steps, and saluted Jiang Qiong. "Master, the evil demon has left. It seems to be heading towards the distant, mysterious giant fruit. Should we deactivate the sect protection formation?" The female cultivator asked. The mention of the mysterious giant fruit caused her voice to hesitate for a moment. Jiang Qiong glared at her and said, "You feel the malevolence of this heaven and earth. Do you think it should be deactivated?" The female cultivator replied helplessly, "Master, the resources consumed by this formation are truly immense, and continuing like this could easily drag us down. Over the years, you had not allowed us to go out and compete." Her voice trailed off with a hint of resentment. Jiang Qiong responded, "You must have seen other cultivators from sects that joined the struggle. Haven't you noticed a common trait amongst them?" The female cultivator asked in surprise, "What trait?" "They all become mad, bold, even obsessive. Once they set foot on this path, it seems they can never turn back. I'm not sure if my current decision is right, but if the disciples of Gathering Flowers sect become like that, then sooner or later the sect will perish." Jiang Qiong's words plunged the female cultivator into silence. She thought carefully about the faces of those people. They did seem off, with a crazed posture. The palace continued to tremble violently, with hot or icy winds blowing intermittently. Just as the female cultivator was about to leave, a voice full of oppression rang out. "Shangtian, I did indeed underestimate you, but the path you've chosen will surely lead to your doom." The voice of the Supreme Demon Emperor tinged with fear. Jiang Qiong didn't know who the voice belonged to, but she knew of Xingxin's legend. Demons rampage, and immortal gods fight amongst themselves. Even in the Nirvana realm, facing such a cataclysm, are we any different from mortals? Jiang Xiong's voice was intricate with emotion as she looked at her disciple and said somberly, "In such turbulent times, the best we mortals can do is to hide, not like moths to a flame trying to fight for something. We can't compete for such an opportunity." Search the novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 548. The strongest in the world, the shout of the supreme demon emperor made all beings realize the strength of Shengtian. Those ancient legends resurfaced in everyone's minds. Before the changing of the eras, Shangtian was the most powerful existence between heaven and earth and was the supreme ruler, the true sovereign of heaven and earth. Later on, she vanished, and many influential figures emerged in the world, causing her name to be seldom mentioned. What was Shangtian doing? Just how strong was she? Countless creatures gazed at the heaven and earth Tao fruit suspended above the ground, speculating in their hearts. Shangtian had a very positive image, and in front of such terrifying celestial phenomena, the beings who knew of her began to hope that she could save everything. Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan stayed in his own room, watching the battle. Zhu Shi was absorbing the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit, while resisting the offensive from the supreme demon realm, facing thousands alone, displaying immense strength. That supreme demon emperor was also a profound yuan-free immortal, and even at the same realm, with a group of powerful subordinates assisting him, he was still unable to gain the upper hand over Zhu Shi. At this rate, Zhu Shi would certainly merge with the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Judging by Zhu Zai's performance, Guan felt she was now invincible in the profound yuan-free immortal realm, which was quite exaggerated since she had not only just entered the profound yuan-free immortal realm, but had also just broken through from the Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal realm. Even with the borrowed power of the immortal seeker aiding Zhu Shi, her own battle talent was also very strong. Looking across all beings in the celestial spirit great world, judging solely by battle talent, Guan felt that only and how could barely compare to Zhu Shi. Lia, LV Xian, Yang Jian, Chun Chuan, and others were far behind. With Gu An's current cultivation level, he had the confidence to make such a judgment, for all beings in the world were within his sight. "Disciple, what would you do?" Guan muttered to himself, referring to Anhao. Under the guidance of the celestial Tao Golden Core, Anhao also wanted to contend for the heaven and earth Tao fruit. But even with the power of the celestial Tao Golden Core, he couldn't possibly be Zhu Zai's opponent. The celestial Tao Golden Core and the heaven and earth Tao fruit both belonged to the same person, but the Tao fruit itself was transformed from the Golden Core. How this being could retain both Tao fruit and Golden Core, or what Taoist technique they cultivated, was unknown. Could he possibly nurture two golden cores? Guan began to look forward to this being's appearance. All the current struggles were a game between the celestial spirit god and the founder of the celestial spirit great world. All beings were mere pawns. Apart from Guan, the immortal seeker was the only variable. Long Jun from the past did not count. He was no threat to the celestial spirit god. As Guan continued to deduce, the battle between the supreme demon realm and Shengtian intensified, and the world began to feel the effects, with the range getting wider and wider. As the saying goes, when immortals fight, mortals suffer. Even a hint of their unleashed pressure was enough to plunge a region into crisis. Time flew by rapidly. An Xian, celestial demon child, LV Xian, and others couldn't calm down to cultivate. They gathered together, discussing the earth-shaking battle. The screen Guan left behind was reflecting the heaven and earth Tao fruit, which was precisely the battlefield itself. Saw the novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Looking at the unstoppable Zhu Shi, those who had seen her before were all marveling. They had never imagined that the once timid female disciple would have such a domineering side. It looks like the supreme demon realm can't stop her. She seems to be absorbing the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Goodness, if she successfully absorbs it, will she continue to break through? This Tao fruit is heaven and earth itself. Controlling it would mean controlling the entire world. It's unimaginable. Yes, but don't forget what Master said. All of this is due to the machinations of immortal gods who have yet to show themselves. Disciples excitedly discussed among themselves. They were amazed by Zhu Shi and the strength of the supreme demon realm. But they weren't panicked, although they didn't say it outright. Everyone felt in their hearts that Guan was the strongest. Even the blood prison great saint, who had seen the end of great heaven and earth, was calm. In his view, even if his master couldn't defeat that being capable of destroying the universe, he had the power to protect himself. As long as his master dared to continue watching the chaos, he wouldn't panic. He even suspected that his master wanted to snatch the heaven and earth Tao fruit. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. The battle for the Tao fruit continued. The supreme demon realm had already lost half of its forces, and much of the land had cracked, killing countless beings. Sea waves rolled endlessly into the distance, with many magical treasures and flying creatures following them. Various sects were migrating, and there were imperial dynasties taking their citizens to flee, but during the escape, there was both unity and shady deeds happening. Taishan continent was far from the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Countless cultivators at the continent's edge were blocking tsunamis. There was no immediate catastrophe, but the hearts of everyone grew increasingly heavy. The longer time dragged on, the more disaster it brought to all beings. That day at noon, another boundless and mighty pressure descended. This pressure didn't make the creatures of heaven and earth feel uncomfortable, but instead brought a revitalizing sensation. That golden core has actually found an inheritor. Wait, could it be the immortal seeker standing on the heaven and earth Tao fruit? Frowned and muttered to himself. Not far away, Zhu Shi continued to absorb the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Looking upward, Zhu Shi was condensing a Dharma aspect even larger than the heaven and earth Tao fruit, with 1,000 arms, each holding different magical treasures. The Dharma aspect was ever-changing and dazzling to behold. Zhu Shi turned her head to look at him and asked, "Could it be what?" The immortal seeker had a complex look in his eyes, but simply shook his head slightly, saying nothing. Seeing that he was hiding something from her, a chill flashed in Zhu Zai's eyes, but she said no more. At this point, she had no retreat. In fact, not seeing the celestial spirit god up to this point, she felt something was off. The absence of the celestial spirit god meant that even if her actions were successful, they wouldn't threaten him, which was a frightening prospect. Zhu Shi looked down at the heaven and earth Tao fruit beneath her feet, her gaze attempting to pierce through the golden Tao patterns, to see through the heaven and earth Tao fruit. A dazzling bright light struck from the side, hitting Zhu Zai's face. She glanced over to see a huge sun appearing in the sky, illuminating the entire celestial spirit great world. In an instant, the whole world was enveloped in strong light. The nearby continents and oceans were stripped of color. Boom, boom, boom. Out of the massive sun surged waves of fire, forming huge golden dragons larger than mountains, breathing scorching heat. The heaven and earth Tao fruit, and how also desire it. A loud voice like thunder rang through heaven and earth, audible to all creatures. The name and how instantly embedded itself in the memory of all beings. Those who knew him were incredulous, and those who didn't felt tense. Just hearing the voice made one want to submit. Such a powerful being entering the battlefield would surely bring even greater catastrophe to heaven and earth. And how? At Supreme Sect within the Third Medicine Valley, the aged LV Batian sat by his garden, looking up at the bright sun in the sky, mumbling to himself. His turbid eyes gradually brightened. In a trance, it seemed he saw the spirited youth from 9,000 years ago standing in front of him again. "I really am old," Elvi Batian mumbled to himself. "But you certainly aren't old yet. Where are you watching all this?" Search the Novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 549 Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable Supreme Demon Emperor and appeared with the celestial Tao golden core, and that magnificent celestial might made the situation in the great heaven and earth even tenser. Zhuxi did not respond to Gu An's forceful shouting. She directly controlled the Dharma aspect to strike at Guan, releasing the profound primordial aura that made the rules of heaven and earth tremble, causing the celestial vault's thunderclouds to churn and change color, with various anomalies emerging one after another. The clash between the celestial Tao golden core and the heaven and earth Tao fruit affected the entire great heaven and earth. This time, there was no retreat for all beings, as the disaster was no longer centered around the heaven and earth Tao fruit spreading outwards, but instead causing the great heaven and earth to crack everywhere, with no pattern to speak of. In front of these two powerful forces, any being wishing to participate in the struggle did not even have the qualification to approach. The seven subordinates of the silent destruction god emperor were not attracted to the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Instead, they flew towards the outer heaven. After a long time, they flew to the world gate, and in front of the seated celestial spirit god, they bowed respectfully with a reverent attitude. One of them took out a long command token and said carefully, "Celestial God, we wish to return to our great thousand world." The celestial spirit god did not open his eyes, but the world gate behind him began to tremble, and a strong light burst forth from within, which relieved the seven individuals, who immediately flew into the world gate. After their figures disappeared, the world gate quickly returned to calm, and a strong light inside faded away. A mass of black chi condensed out of thin air next to the celestial spirit god, gradually forming a sinister, cold face. "Celestial God, in this battle, my supreme demon realm has suffered heavy losses. Why have you not taken action yet?" The mysterious face asked, its tone perplexed. The celestial spirit god slowly opened his eyes, which were brighter than the sun and the moon, and also demonstrated celestial might. Seeing him open his eyes, the aura of the mysterious face visibly weakened. "I have my own certainty. What you seek is for the supreme demon realm to become an independent great heaven and earth. Even if these demons die out, it doesn't matter." The celestial spirit god's tone was categorically strong-willed, causing the mysterious face to frown. The celestial spirit god's gaze looked towards the celestial spirit great world, his eyes indifferent, yet seeming to be anticipating something. "May I ask, celestial god, now that the celestial Tao destiny has dissipated, why don't you simply destroy the celestial spirit great world? Your goal couldn't possibly be that heaven and earth Tao fruit." The mysterious face continued to ask, growing uneasy as the situation progressed. He couldn't quite pinpoint the source of his unease. He understood the celestial spirit god. This celestial god disdained deception and would fulfill promises he made. But he didn't understand what the celestial spirit god was thinking. "Do you know who created the celestial spirit great world?" The celestial spirit god asked, his voice devoid of any emotion. The mysterious face answered, "I only know of such a creator, unaware of their identity and name. He is the celestial spirit immortal venerable, surpassing the free immortal, condensing the golden immortal Tao fruit. The celestial court's immortal official recruited him, offering him the celestial Tao immortal position, life as long as heavenly Tao." The celestial spirit god explained. He refused. Thus he met such a fate, and his great thousand world is also not blessed by the heavenly Tao. The mysterious face went silent, pondering the celestial spirit god's intent. Was it a warning? Or was it touting the dominance of the celestial court? The celestial spirit god turned his head towards the mysterious face, his gaze making the mysterious face's color unnaturally change. Supreme Demon Emperor, you have undergone reincarnation tens of thousands of times, always one step shy of the golden immortal Tao fruit. The shortfall lies in your understanding of the world. Once you create a great world, you will naturally break through. But you must always remember who created everything and who set the order. When the heavenly Tao wishes you to do something, going against the heavenly Tao will mark the beginning of your endless calamity. The tone of the celestial spirit god made the one called Supreme Demon Emperor's expression fluctuate. Meanwhile, the great battle in the human world was still ongoing. Guin, who was manipulating the celestial Tao golden core, had white hair and skin that even started to show bloodstains. Even so, he was still resolutely staring at Zhu Shi. Zhu Shi glanced at him, her eyes revealing a disdainful sneer. She didn't understand what and how was fighting for, but the heaven and earth Tao fruit was a trap in itself. Countless beings went mad for it, reckless with their own lives. The immortal seeker looked at Hao with a peculiar gaze, occasionally glancing back at Zhu Shi. Suddenly, Zhu Shi spoke up. It seems we both consider ourselves the savior, but I am stronger. If I'm not mistaken, what we're facing is not just the celestial spirit god, but also the existence who created the celestial spirit great world, your disciple as well. As her words ended, Zhu Zai's eyes turned cold as she looked toward the immortal seeker. The immortal seeker had sought her out under the pretext of helping his disciple seek revenge. Now that his disciple was not entirely dead, their trust was naturally crumbling. Search *The Nellfire. Inti website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The immortal seeker sighed. I failed to see through him. I didn't expect him to hide so deeply. However, what comes next is a good thing for you. You won't have to face the celestial spirit god alone. Zhu Shi lifted her right hand, and the thousand-handed Dharma aspect above her changed gestures, the various magical treasures blazing with dazzling light. And Hao, suspended in front of the celestial Tao golden core, suddenly had his pupils constrict. The world in front of him changed abruptly, and he found himself in a barren land with no bounds. There was no sky above, only a brilliant starscape, and Zhu Zai's Dharma aspect loomed even larger above him, looking down. And Hao frowned. Behind him, more waves of fire surged from the celestial Tao golden core, quickly pulling him into it. One of us will be possessed by him, and even though you are also a disciple of Master, his favorite disciple, I won't give up on myself. Zhu Zai's voice echoed beneath the starry void, filled with an oppressive force. Within the celestial Tao golden core, an eye appeared, occupying the entirety of it, bearing a resemblance to Hao's eyes, yet different. Meanwhile, in reality, the celestial Tao golden core collided with Zhu Zai's Dharma aspect, scattering it before landing on the heaven and earth Tao fruit, while Zhu Shi and the immortal seeker had vanished without a trace. From a cosmic perspective, the celestial spirit great world burst into a wave of shock force, spreading extravagantly through the universe. The layers of celestial Tao light completely dissipated, and the beings fleeing to outer heaven were eradicated by the shock, utterly annihilated. The evil demons assaulting the heaven and earth Tao fruit from the supreme demon realm were wiped out. In contrast, the cultivators from the human world remained unharmed. Elsewhere, in front of the world gate, the celestial spirit god slowly rose to his feet. Just as the supreme demon emperor was about to speak, he sharply turned his head, showing a look of shock. This aura? How is it possible? Is he really still alive? Exclaimed the supreme demon emperor. The celestial spirit god raised his right hand, and a giant axe appeared in his grip, spiraling with celestial Tao flame. It was the white flame that symbolized absolute order. I have been looking forward to this battle for a long time, forgetting how many years it has been. The voice of the celestial spirit god resounded, his tone becoming excited for the first time, tinged with a trace of fervor. Far away in the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guin suddenly sat up, his expression peculiar, and his eyes filled with surprise. And he actually, Guin noticed that Hao's physical body had merged with the heaven and earth Tao fruit, even evolving into a different aura. It felt like the awakening of a past life, yet different, and Hao was undoubtedly connected to the founder of the celestial spirit great world, but likely not a reincarnation. While surprised by Hao's transformation, the strength of the celestial spirit god was something neither Hao nor the heaven and earth Tao fruit could contend with. It would ultimately be up to him to make a move. Good. Guin stood up and began to limber up inside the room, forming a stark contrast with the celestial spirit god before the world gate. He was eager to try. The other, invincible to the world. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 550. The Treasures of the Immortal Palace. The collision of the forces between the heaven and earth Tao fruit and the celestial Tao golden core not only made the world tremble, but also affected the other great heaven and earths within the universe, turning the disaster into a cosmic calamity. The Tao mist in the silent extinction domain surged violently, with pieces of nebulae dispersing and new ones being born. The cosmic beasts hidden in darkness began to flee in all directions, presenting a chaotic scene in the vast, boundless universe. At Supreme Sect, on the mountains at the edge of the Third Medicine Valley, Long Qing, Long Jun, and Candlestar stood side by side, looking towards the bright light on the horizon, their faces barely concealing their shock. Candlestar couldn't help but look at Long Jun and asked, "Senior, can you see through all this?" He could feel a powerful presence awakening in the distance, its momentum increasing at an unimaginable pace. "I cannot see through it either. What is happening now is completely different from the future I foresaw," Long Jun replied, his eyes complex. Long Qing caught a glimpse of Long Jun's expression with his peripheral vision and sensed the unrest and confusion of this elder. This was the first time he had seen such an expression on his ancestor's face. He looked back towards the horizon, his emotions mixed. Brother and Hao, Zhu Shi, Long Qing murmured these two names in his heart. Both were fellow disciples, and although Zhu Shi was Saint Heaven reincarnated, they had this connection. How could he not be affected? Wuxia world. Sight he realized he truly wasn't the master's most favored disciple. And Hao and Zhu Shi had already been able to dominate the trends of heaven and earth, while he could only hide within Medicine Valley to cultivate his divine skills, which were profound and unfathomable, and how much longer it would take to master them was unknown. All living beings were enveloped by the bright light, and everything lost its color. Even mortal spirits could feel the oppressive force swiftly strengthening, but, miraculously, this didn't extinguish the mortal spirits. From the view of the universe, at the center of the celestial spirit great world, there was a mass of strong light, and this light was rising. Within the strong light, two figures were battling, Zhu Shi and Hao. Zhu's eyes' Dharma aspect shrank to 10,000 zhang tall, completely suppressing Hao, who had turned into a bloodied figure, his physical body occasionally exploding but quickly coalescing again. Both were utilizing the power of heaven and earth, but Zhu Zai's cultivation level was far superior to Hao's, the gap in strength vast. "You're no match for me. Give up." Zhu Shi looked down upon Hao, her cold voice echoing, her Dharma aspect not ceasing its spell casting. And Hao didn't utter a word, clenching his teeth and persevering, his blood-streaked, white hair whipping about, as if he were a mad demon. Patterns of gold slowly appeared on his chest, and soon an eye emerged, It was the mysterious giant eye from within the celestial Tao golden core. Seeing this eye, Zhu Shi frowned. At that moment, countless light stars burst forth from behind Zhu Shi, hurtling towards Enhao at high speed, and her expression drastically changed. She felt her own power being siphoned away, headed toward Enhao. The divine skills taught by the Immortal Seeker could prevent her from being devoured by the Heaven and Earth Tao fruit, but they could not stop the power of the Heaven and Earth Tao fruit from leaving. What's going on? Zhu Shi furrowed her brows tightly, staring intently at Enhao. As the power of the Heaven and Earth Tao fruit surged into Enhao's body, he rapidly transformed into a blood silkworm, his curled-up body faintly visible. It wasn't just the power of the Heaven and Earth Tao fruit, but also the power of the celestial Tao golden core no longer lent to Enhao, but merging inside him in an inexplicable manner. Enhao was transforming into someone else. Meanwhile, Guan, exercising his muscles in secret, was startled by Enhao's fate turning murky, making him hesitant about whether to make a move prematurely. But if he struck prematurely, the master of the great world would still leave behind a hidden danger. If the will of the master of the celestial spirit great world remained and could observe all creatures, that posed a risk for Gu and as well. He couldn't let anyone know of his ability to steal lifespans, so he would wait. It was only fair that Enhao should pay a price for his choices, since no one had forced him on this path. Guan saw the celestial spirit god move, holding that familiar massive axe, and walking towards the celestial spirit great world. Behind him followed a mass of demonic qi, whose essence was the same as the evil demons of the supreme demon realm, especially similar to that of the supreme demon emperor. With just one glance, Guan saw through its cause and effect. The supreme demon emperor, the ancient being who established the supreme demon realm. The supreme demon emperor was merely his disciple, managing the supreme demon realm on his behalf, while he had always hidden in the shadows, unknown to anyone in the supreme demon realm except for the supreme demon emperor. Feeling something, the supreme demon emperor suddenly stopped. The celestial spirit god paid no mind and continued forward, his eyes only on the celestial spirit immortal venerable. He didn't walk fast, still waiting for the celestial spirit immortal venerable to revive. Before long, having lost the power of the Heaven and Earth Tao fruit, Zhu Zai's cultivation level fell sharply, suddenly dropping to the Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal realm. She couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, her complexion instantly turning pallid. She looked ahead, and the blood silkworm, transformed by how had grown over 100,000 zhang tall, his figure had also become enormous, still curling up. A deep breathing sound came from inside the blood silkworm, as if the oldest demon god was about to awaken. "Are you still not leaving?" The voice of the Immortal Seeker entered Zhu Zai's ears. She turned her head to see the Immortal Seeker appearing beside her. His body emitted a faint silver light, his robe fluttering slightly, full of immortal energy. Zhu Shi retorted, "Leave? Where do I go? To the world gate?" The Immortal Seeker sighed. "I underestimated him. Perhaps I was also calculated by him. I will help you leave. Your talent should not be buried here." Just as Zhu Shi was about to continue mocking, the Immortal Seeker's soul emerged from his body, and he turned, swinging his hand towards her. His palm was incredibly fast, so fast that even Zhu Shi in the Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal realm couldn't react in time. Struck by the palm wind from afar, Zhu Zai's eyes widened as she fell backward, a silver-white light gate appearing behind her. She fell straight into it, and the light gate abruptly vanished. The flesh of the Immortal Seeker perished, leaving only his soul floating in the void, his face showing a weary expression. He turned to look at the massive blood silkworm, his gaze complex. "My disciple, why must you also hide from your master? Could it really have been your fault back then?" The Immortal Seeker muttered to himself. "Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, you established the Celestial Spirit Great World, and were conferred the celestial Tao immortal position by the celestial court. Yet you refused and even harmed immortal officials, sacrificing all living beings. Now, do you still want to commit crimes? The voice of the celestial spirit God came from the depths of the universe and reached the ears of all beings in the universe. The name Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable made all beings remember. Establish the Celestial Spirit Great World? Sacrifice all living beings? The information in these words struck fear into all beings. Then another voice arose. What about you, Celestial Spirit God? Without my establishment of the great thousand world, where would your godly position come from? You force me to sacrifice all living beings. You keep the great thousand world in its shattered state, unable to be repaired by the heavenly Tao. Your actions have already violated the celestial rules. What are you pursuing? Do you think I don't know? Celestial Spirit, Immortal Venerable. His voice was similar to Enhao's, but more imposing. Listening to their dialogue, the immortal seeker furrowed his brow tightly. Seeming to think of something incredible, he looked up at the giant blood silkworm and couldn't help but say, "Back when you followed me to the immortal palace, could you really have stolen that ultimate treasure?" The giant blood silkworm did not make another sound, and the celestial spirit God did not continue the conversation. Though the dialogue had ended, the vast oppressive force of the celestial spirit God was drawing near. Inside the house, Guin, listening to the conversation of the two, grew curious. What was the relationship between the celestial spirit God and celestial spirit Immortal Venerable? And what were the treasures they mentioned? Boom! Accompanied by a heaven-shattering loud noise, the universe trembled as the giant blood silkworm exploded. Blood winds raged in various directions of the universe. A towering figure appeared. It was Enhao, but more robust than before. His upper body bare, an eye growing on his chest. A black dragon wrapped around his waist. Vicious black chi surged below, encircling him, his white hair wildly flying. That face, identical to Enhao's, showed no emotion. He was Enhao, and he was also the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. Reflected in his eyes was the approaching figure of the celestial spirit God. The two, separated across the universe, locked in a destined conflict with only each other in their sight. "Master, you shouldn't have come. Go back, pretend you know nothing of this. Whether it's him or me, whether alive or dead, do not pursue it further." The voice of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable rang out again, seemingly unafraid of others hearing, his voice still resonant. Chapter 551. Guin versus the Celestial Spirit God. Hearing the words of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, the immortal seeker's expression turned ugly, anger apparent in his eyes. "Why have you chosen to be born at this time?" The immortal seeker looked up at the figure of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and asked, suppressing his rage, knowing now was not the time for petty calculations. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable did not answer, but instead turned to gaze toward the celestial spirit Great World, his eyes filled with profound meaning. At the same time, a brilliant light appeared from the depths of the universe. It was the figure of the celestial spirit God holding the celestial Tao divine axe, stepping on the Tao rules. Every step he took, ripples spread throughout the cosmic space. Under his steps, the universe seemed ephemeral, ready to vanish at any moment. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable turned back, refocusing his gaze on the celestial spirit God. He raised his right hand, palm facing upwards, and gold flame spontaneously appeared and rapidly coalesced into a great cauldron, growing larger continuously until it dwarfed his own form. Above the cauldron, a vortex with stars scattered within, breathtakingly beautiful, resembling the most mystical secret realm, brimming with allure. The moment the cauldron appeared, all beings felt as if their strength was being siphoned away. Countless fell paralyzed to the ground, those flying cultivators and demons crashing into oceans and between mountains. All at once, the celestial spirit Great World fell silent. Inside the palace, Jiang Qiong lay weak on the staircase, looking toward the outside of the grand doors, her face revealing a look of despair. Wuxia World. Sight Wuxia World. Sight. Koshi felt her mana and chi power being drawn out in an instant, even her divine sense disappearing without a trace. Her Tao practice accumulated over nearly 10,000 years. How could this be? She couldn't fathom what she was experiencing and what kind of being was behind this. Suddenly, her peripheral vision caught another pair of feet beside her. Her pupils dilated sharply as she was about to look up. A hand grasped her forearm. Endless mana poured into her, revitalizing her strength rapidly. Feeling this mana, Jiang Qiong didn't need to see the person to instantly let her guard down. She looked up with a smile on her face. "It really is you," Jiang Qiong said softly, her expression somewhat infatuated. Guan pulled her to her feet and asked with a smile, "Do you know why your mana disappeared?" Jiang Qiong leaned on him. "Why?" "Because the mana you cultivated and you yourself are creatures of great heaven and earth. For great heaven and earth to reclaim everything from you, it's as easy as turning over one's hand," Guan said with a helpless smile, feeling her body against his. At such a time, this guy was still making his moves. Hearing this, Jiang Qiong frowned, straightened up, and asked, "Great heaven and earth? Is great heaven and earth punishing us now? What did we do wrong?" "That's right, you did nothing wrong. But great heaven and earth is not what you think it is. It's actually a person, or rather a cultivator, whose emotions cannot be swayed by those he created, like you." Gu An's answer shocked Jiang Qiong. Her beautiful eyes widened, speechless. Because the words came from Guan, she believed them. And because she believed, her perception was overthrown. She felt the world was preposterous. While Guan was explaining the truth about great heaven and earth to Jiang Qiong, the celestial spirit god had already arrived before the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, no longer smaller in stature than the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. Under the presence of the two mighty beings, the celestial spirit Great World seemed nothing more than a stepping stone, no longer holding the grandeur and magnificence of great heaven and earth. The celestial spirit god, still holding the celestial Tao divine axe and emitting a strong heavenly light, dazzling to the extreme, looked at the great cauldron in the hands of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and spoke, "Purple Chi creation cauldron, being with you has done it a disservice. Today, I hope you will let it show its true strength." The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable fixated on the celestial spirit god. "You have grown stronger." The celestial spirit god lifted the celestial Tao divine axe, pointing at him. "After I execute you and destroy your great thousand world, I will shed the identity of the celestial spirit and ascend to an even higher rank among the immortal gods." Had you not ambushed me back then, the outcome would still be in question. As the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable's voice fell, the purple Chi creation cauldron burst forth with a vast Chi sea. The silvery stellar sea suddenly expanded, enveloping the entire universe. The aura of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable surged relentlessly. He was absorbing the power of all things in the universe, including the powers of those great worlds. The celestial spirit god still did not make a move. The soul of the immortal seeker floated in the distance, his gaze locked on the celestial spirit god. He could tell that the celestial spirit god had utter contempt for the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. Has he reached a higher realm? The immortal seeker frowned, feeling uneasy. It was not just him. Even the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable could feel the disdain from the celestial spirit god. At that moment, within the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, inside a dark space, an house stood beside the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, both gazing ahead. 100 yards away, a screen of light suspended, showing the figure of the celestial spirit god. Looking at the immovable celestial spirit god, the disheveled and how felt uneasy, he turned to the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and asked, "Are you confident?" The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable dressed in a white robe, looked very similar to Enhao, though with a more weathered face. I can only do my best, and besides, I have no other choice, do I? The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable replied, his answer darkening Enhao's expression. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable turned to Enhao with a smile. Don't worry too much. With my abilities, even if I cannot defeat him, helping you to escape to safety is hardly a difficult task. Enhao was not pleased. He asked, Why do you treat me this way? He had a suspicion in his heart, but dared not voice it. You guessed right, but also not quite. You can indeed be considered my child, but not in the way you understand birth. You were conceived from my own Tao, and it was my choice to let you be born where you were. As long as you are within my great thousand world, I could even keep you immortal. I have always been watching over you. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable continued. Chapter 551. Guan versus the Celestial Spirit God. _2, and how didn't feel shocked. In the thousands of years he had spent comprehending the celestial Tao Golden Core, he had long sensed that his destiny pattern was extraordinary, which is why he could feel his own mission. He stared at the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and asked, The change of era, was it your active choice, or was it the choice of the heavenly Tao? If there were no change of era, the celestial Tao light layer weakening, how would the celestial spirit God dare to make a move? In the process of his comprehension of the heavenly Tao, he could feel the suppression of the so-called immortal gods by the heavenly Tao. That's right, it was my active choice, replied the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, his gaze fixed on the celestial spirit God in the light screen. Enhao immediately became anxious and asked, Why? I need time to grow. Given time, I would surely be able to help you eradicate the celestial spirit God and aid in your resurrection. He had absolute confidence in his talent. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable turned to look at him, his eyes complex, and said, Child, you truly are my most perfect creation. You make me prouder than the entire great thousand world. But it's not that I don't give you time. It's because there are existences in the world that are even more terrifying than the celestial spirit God. What existences? Enhao frowned and asked. Today, the number of powerful beings ravaging the celestial spirit great world were countless, and many names flashed through his mind. At that moment, in reality, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable's right hand raised, and the purple chi creation cauldron took flight, spinning, the mouth of the cauldron facing the celestial spirit God. Boom! A majestic force that made the entire universe tremble erupted from the cauldron mouth, and a vast silver blue chi sea burst forth, grand and unstoppable, illuminating the celestial vault of the celestial spirit great world. Wuxia world. Sight countless creatures lying on the ground looked up to see the celestial vault disappear. They saw a silver blue giant river, within which countless stars twinkled. The eyes of all beings were filled with dots of silver blue light. They saw the figures of the celestial spirit God and the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, resembling two founding gods, making all creatures feel their own insignificance. Even those in the immortal Tao realm felt nothing but infinite reverence in their hearts at this moment. The divine power of the purple chi creation cauldron fell onto the body of the celestial spirit God, blocked by a layer of white light. How domineering was this silver river, capable of destroying everything. The space it passed through was ripped apart into dark regions, yet even such a powerful force could not shake the figure of the celestial spirit God. Is this all you can do? The voice of the celestial spirit God sounded, with a hint of disappointment. Inside the dark space, Enhao witnessed this scene, his brows deeply furrowed. As for what existence, I cannot tell you. Now, our opponent is him, the celestial spirit God, the real immortal God. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable looked ahead as he spoke, his expression returning to indifference. As his voice fell, the purple chi creation cauldron trembled, and from within that silver river emerged numerous silver figures. They swiftly attacked the celestial spirit God, and in the blink of an eye, the number of silver figures reached an exaggerated amount. They quickly surrounded the celestial spirit god, the disparity in their figures immense, like dust surrounding Mount Tai, yet somehow the dust was plentiful enough to completely surround it. Boom! A terrifying axe chi erupted, dispersing millions of silver figures, chopping through the silver river, striking the purple chi creation cauldron, and the mightily purple chi creation cauldron was directly sent flying. The purple chi creation cauldron disappeared into the depths of the universe, and all was once again silent. With just one move, the celestial spirit god had defeated the divine skills of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, even sending his treasure flying. The celestial spirit god maintained the posture of swinging his axe, his right arm turning slightly, swinging his axe again. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable immediately raised his palm to defend, a powerful mana bursting forth containing the strength of thousands of great power of heaven and earth, wishing to contend against the celestial spirit god. Boom! A deafening roar resounded in the ears of all beings, and they faintly heard something like the sound of shattering crystal. Facing the attack of the celestial spirit god, the great magical power of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable could not hold on, and was directly dispersed. His flesh bore densely packed wounds, gruesomely ghastly. Heaven-balancing, golden immortal. The immortal seeker floating in the void looked extremely ugly as he struggled to utter these four words. The heavily injured celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, furrowed his brows, his gaze towards the celestial spirit god complex. Inside the dark space, the celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, took a deep breath. And Hao's spirit was taut. He hadn't anticipated the disparity between the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and the celestial spirit god to be so great. And Hao asked cautiously. He didn't know how to show his concern, because right then, there was nothing he could do. It seems I cannot stop him. I will send you away. Once the celestial spirit great world is extinguished, you and I will have no more karma. Live well, for me, and witness an even vaster heaven and earth. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable took a deep breath and spoke somberly. Upon hearing this, and Hao immediately became anxious. He was about to speak when the voice of the celestial spirit god resonated through the dark space. Trying to escape? Do you really think it's like the old days? Before the words even fell, the celestial spirit god in the light screen swung his axe again. This axe struck not only the immense body of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, but also shattered the light screen and the dark space. Intense light poured in, enveloping Hao and the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. And Hao was horrified to find himself suppressed by an incredibly strong force, completely unable to move. He could only glance towards the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. However, what made him even more desperate was the look of panic that appeared on the face of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. What realm are you exactly? The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable bit out, equally unable to move. He knew that the celestial spirit god was strong, but he hadn't expected the gap to be so huge. Faced with the celestial spirit god, he had no power to resist. In the midst of the blinding light, the celestial spirit god, just like before, stepped forward, seemingly symbolizing a divine power of destruction, unstoppable. Heaven-balancing, golden immortal, mid-stage. The voice of the celestial spirit god echoed through the space that was breaking apart, causing the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable to lose his composure. Chapter 551. Guan versus the Celestial Spirit God. _3 Even after creating the celestial spirit great world, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable had barely reached the innate golden immortal realm, and the heaven-balancing golden immortal seemed infinitely distant to him, almost an extravagant wish. However, the celestial spirit god had attained it, even surpassing the early stage. In a daze, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable thought back to when his master had taken him to the Immortal Palace, and he saw the celestial spirit god. At that time, the celestial spirit god was merely his junior, who had appeared in the Immortal Palace because the master of the Immortal Palace had taken notice of his talent. Rising from a mortal world to become the heaven-encompassing free immortal, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable didn't care about this. In his eyes, even if the talent of the celestial spirit god was extraordinary, it would never surpass his own. In the end, he died at the hands of the celestial spirit god. And now, the celestial spirit god had far surpassed him. Throughout the long years of death, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable could sense the presence of the celestial spirit god. The celestial spirit god had never left, which means the celestial spirit god had achieved the heaven-balancing golden immortal by meditating and attaining enlightenment on his own. Thinking of this, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable's pride was completely shattered. He totally lost his spirit. Senior, Senior, faint voices reached the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable's ears, but they could not awaken his fighting spirit. Father. Suddenly, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable felt a jolt like thunder awakening him. He instinctively turned his head and saw Enhao looking at him, his face fierce. Father, since you are my father, you cannot just surrender. Even if you die, you must die fighting. Enhao gritted his teeth and roared, struggling to speak as he was unable to move. Sir, the novel Fire. Net * website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He could accept defeat, he could accept death, but he could not accept the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable losing confidence. Ever since his parents died in his childhood, he too had fantasized about them still being alive. Facing a demon beast back then, his father was just a mortal who, in order to protect him, fearlessly drew the beast away. It was his father's example that gave him the courage to fight to the death, to protect an Xin from the same village. Later, he met Guin, the most important mentor of his life, whose strength and fearlessness guided him. The fear of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable made Enhao angry. He would not allow the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable to display such loss of composure. What fear is there in death? Touched by Enhao's gaze, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable took a deep breath and looked back at the celestial spirit god with a determined expression. He struggled to raise his right hand, facing the aura of the heaven-balancing golden immortal, his hand shaking uncontrollably, not from fear, but from being unable to bear the pressure. Even in death, I must protect him. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable bit his teeth, thinking thus in his heart. Suddenly, the celestial spirit god appeared abruptly in front of the two, raising the celestial Tao divine axe high, ready to strike at Enhao. He intended to execute Enhao right in front of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. The pupils of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable shrank. Time seemed to freeze, and he felt so slow. Although Enhao was right beside him, his hand just couldn't reach him. Enhao's face was illuminated by a bright light. He remained fierce, his eyes filled with towering rage, staring fixedly at the celestial spirit god. He was ready to face death, but he did not wish to die without dignity. Boom! Darkness fell before Enhao's eyes, and then a wild wind arose. The pressure that bound him suddenly vanished, but another indescribable force enveloped him, forcing him to close his eyes. The surprised voice of the celestial spirit god rang out, startling Enhao into hurriedly opening his eyes. When he saw the figure before him, his eyes widened and his body trembled. Between the celestial spirit god and Enhao, a figure appeared, blocking the celestial Tao divine axe in the hands of the celestial spirit god. The divine axe was suspended above the head of this person, unable to fall, the blade about 10 centimeters from their forehead, but it was these 10 centimeters that saved Enhao's life. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable also felt the binds on himself disappear and turned to look at the figure that had appeared. His brows furrowed tightly, his eyes filled with fear. "Master!" and Hao exclaimed excitedly. That person was none other than Guin. Guin, dressed in black, stood in front of Hao, his robe fluttering. The Cyan Hong's sword hung at his waist, his right hand still resting on the hilt, as he calmly stared down the celestial spirit god. As their four eyes met, the celestial spirit god's gaze held a scrutinizing hint, while Guin was as peaceful as still water. Guin had imagined countless times standing in confrontation with the celestial spirit god. Now that the moment had truly arrived, his heart settled into an unprecedented calm. At that moment, facing the celestial spirit god was not just Guin. There was also the extremity, Yang Xian, and the Black Profound Emperor. Search the novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 552 Celestial I Dao Skill. One Sword Slays God. Celestial Spirit God. Middle stage of Hung Tian Golden Immortal Realm 0/0/0. Guin looked at the lifespan detection prompt before him, feeling puzzled. The fact that information could be detected indicated that this celestial spirit god was indeed in real flesh. A situation where all values were zero made him think of the divine exotic Ghost King. Was this so-called immortality dependent on sacrificing one's own lifespan to some power? Who are you? The celestial spirit god's voice echoed in the fragmented dark space, his posture poised with the axe raised. Guin stood before him, gazing calmly, and said, "As an immortal god, yet you seek to annihilate all beings in the great world. I really want to know, is this your own principle of action, or the will of the celestial court?" In his past life, while he was still on Earth City, he had heard of the myths of the celestial court, with both positive and negative aspects. The status of the celestial court in mythology was undeniably recognized by the Huaxia people. This life, whenever he heard of the celestial court, his feelings were complex, joyful yet anxious. He was joyful that the name of the celestial court could reach the earth where he came from. Was there hope for him to return? Anxious because if the celestial court truly existed, would his writings of Journey to the West and the Investiture of the Gods alarm the celestial court? These emotions had been smoothed out as time passed. The celestial spirit god looked at Gu and asked, "Is it important?" "Very important." The answer made the celestial spirit god fall silent for a moment. The celestial spirit god solemnly said, "The heavenly Tao has its celestial rules. Celestial gods have their own choices." This response slightly changed Guin's view of him. By this point, that the celestial spirit god could maintain the image of a celestial court was enough to prove his loyalty to it, and it also indicated that his attitude towards the celestial spirit great world stemmed from personal feelings. A force more powerful than the celestial spirit god erupted, repelling him, and the collapsing dark space shattered as well, transporting them back into the cosmos. Tao protecting divine essence. The powerful divine power dispersed the celestial Tao divine light surrounding the celestial spirit god, revealing his true form. He was dressed in heavy silver armor, his helmet adorned with a silver dragon. His breastplate resembled a qilin, shoulder pads with phoenixes spreading their wings, and a red belt emanating pieces of world power. In his hand, the celestial Tao divine axe contained vast heavenly power, blazing and imposing. An astonished expression appeared on the stern face of the celestial spirit god. Just one move, and he felt that the other's cultivation level was not weaker than his own. With such Tao practice, why intervene in the calamity of the great world? The celestial spirit god stared intently at Guin and asked in a deep voice. He could feel boundless way of cause and effect enveloping the cosmos, and there was no escape for him. Even the connection to the heavenly Tao was severed. The opponent was exceedingly adept in the way of cause and effect. Guin raised his right hand. The celestial star sword appeared in his grasp, and the blade wrapped itself in dazzling sword light, intensely bright. And Hal looked at Guin holding the sword, his emotions surging, feeling as if his blood was boiling, his face turning bright red. The celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, looked at Guin with a complex look, especially noticing in Hal's expression, and felt even more mixed emotions. At this moment, the beings within the celestial spirit great world could not see the confrontation outside. They could only see the cosmic starry sky, and the whole world silenced because of it. The beings were very nervous, unclear about what was to come. On a dilapidated island, Leah lay on the cliff, struggling to look up. The divine, exotic, immortal spirit appeared on his shoulder, excitedly looking towards the universe. Leah could feel its excitement and immediately guessed the reason. His expression turned complex, but it was as though a burden had been lifted from his heart. Indeed, it still depends on you. You are the true protector of this world, unparalleled. Leah gazed at the cosmic starry sky, thinking thus, his eyes gradually filled with admiration. Just as this thought occurred, a sword light burst through the cosmic starry sky, illuminating the heavens and earth, making Leah instinctively close his eyes. In the cosmic void, the celestial spirit god froze in place, the darkness behind him cleaved in two by a streak of sword light, still gripping the celestial Tao divine axe, trembling all over. He fixated on Guin ahead, while Guin maintained the sword-swinging posture. The body of the celestial spirit god developed cracks, divine blood seeping out, his condition greatly resembling in Hal's. So fast, the celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, stared at Guin, his expression grave. He hadn't seen clearly how Guin had swung his sword, and Hal's sense of it wasn't as profound, but he could tell that his master had suppressed the celestial spirit god's momentum, which excited him. The celestial spirit god's gaze sharpened, suddenly leaping up. Nearly instantly, he burst forth with an even stronger aura, a vast sea of light appearing above him in the universe, and the celestial spirit god plunged into it, vanishing from sight. Soon after, within the light sea, a massive eye appeared. As this colossal eye opened, eyes of all sizes appeared from every direction in the universe, densely surrounding Guin and the two others, all these eyes fixated on them. Far away, the immortal seeker witnessed this scene, his expression changing once again. Celestial I-Dao skill, he actually mastered such a great divine power. The immortal seeker was no longer startled for the first time by the celestial spirit god. He hadn't expected that he was still underestimating the celestial spirit god. His gaze unintentionally switched to Guin. For some reason, he could not see Guin's true face, indicating that the other party was using some powerful method to isolate his senses. However, looking at Guin's figure, it felt familiar, as if he had met him before. But no matter how much he thought, he just couldn't remember. He didn't think he had a poor memory. Rather, the other had employed the power of cause and effect. The celestial spirit god had astonished him, and this suddenly appearing mysterious existence also filled him with curiosity and awe. All these years in the great thousand world, you're the first one to force me to exert my full strength. Those who defy the heavenly Tao should be reduced to ashes and smoke. The voice of the celestial spirit god echoed, authoritative and domineering. In an instant, countless celestial eyes burst open in the starry sky, their pupils emanating multicolored lights. Almost instantly, Guin's mana enveloped celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, and Hal, and the celestial spirit great world below. The universe began to twist violently. Distant meteors ignited into towering flames, while others were frozen solid. The celestial I-Dao skill can invoke the power of the heavenly Tao, allowing the 3,000 great Tao to aid him. This skill could destroy the great thousand world. The face of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable was solemn as he spoke, and Hao saw streams of nebulous starry seas appear in the distance, ravaging the cosmic void. Everything before him seemed chaotic and even made him feel dizzy. An invisible force was invading him, an eerie sensation he had never experienced before. The celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, looked at Guan and said, "Once the celestial Dao skill is employed, you are essentially making enemies with the 3,000 great Dao. You cannot." He hadn't finished speaking when Guan suddenly swung his sword, and a silver-blue sword shadow appeared out of nowhere, sweeping across the dazzling, illusionary universe. In front of this sword shadow, meteors, heaven and earth, star clouds, and sun and moon all seemed insignificant. With one slash, thousands of celestial eyes were completely extinguished. Above, the sea of celestial light was also slashed away, revealing the figure of the celestial spirit god, his silver armor shattered, exposing his bloody and mangled body, his helmet thrown aside, his black hair splayed out. The celestial spirit god's eyes widened, incredulously looking at Gu and suddenly appear before him, his left hand quickly grasping the celestial spirit god's long hair, then raising his sword to slash. The sword light shone across the universe, illuminating thousands of great worlds and countless little worlds. Celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, and Hao, Immortal Seeker, and the observing great power cultivators from afar all blinked their eyes, and when they opened them again, the omnipresent celestial Tao pressure enveloping the universe began to dissipate. They all looked in the same direction and saw a blurred figure floating in the void, one hand wielding a sword, the other holding the decapitated head of the celestial spirit god. Behind that figure still lingered the magnificent blue sword shadow, scattered deep into the universe. The divine blood of the celestial spirit god spilled down, scorching the space, causing meteors to be penetrated by the droplets, much of the divine blood falling into the celestial spirit great world, vanishing from the mortal world. The celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, watched, dumbfounded, and Hao, too, was shocked. He knew his master was strong, but the celestial spirit god had already demonstrated an invincible demeanor, and such a powerful being had no chance against his master. Even more hopeless than the celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, facing the celestial spirit god. At that moment, the decapitated head of the celestial spirit god that Guan held in his hand still had its eyes open, gazing up at Guan, filled with fear. It's impossible. Who are you, really?" The celestial spirit god asked in a trembling voice, unable to accept that his celestial Dao skill had been annihilated by a single sword strike. Even an image came to his mind. Ia the Oval Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. That person, whose sword Dao talent had left a deep impression, if allowed to grow, could he reach the level of the man before him? Guan looked down at him expressionlessly, his right hand performing the universe in hand divine power, drawing the head into his palm, disappearing from sight. After doing all this, Guan turned around, looking at the universe. His eternal infinite divine sword had broken the celestial Dao skill, yet the universe was still collapsing. This scene seemed to be moving towards the future he had predicted before. Although he was powerful, he could not manipulate the Tao rules of the Great Thousand World, because this Great Thousand World did not belong to him. Guan could feel that the reason for the universe's collapse was not just the celestial Dao skill, but other factors as well. His gaze looked far towards the celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable. The celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, was also looking back at him, his face calm like a deep lake. And Hao also snapped out of his excitement, realizing the universe was collapsing, the atmosphere everywhere dense with danger and tension. Could it be? And Hao seemed to think of something, his expression turning unsightly. The celestial spirit, Immortal Venerable, turned his head towards him and calmly said, "Previously, I extracted all the heaven and earth's power, already causing this Great Thousand World to lose its stable Tao order. Coupled with the disruption of the celestial I Dao skill, this great thousand world is on the verge of annihilation, ceasing to exist. Upon hearing this, and how, surprisingly unalarmed, looked at the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and asked, "What should we do then? Don't you have the slightest pity for all living beings?" The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable turned his head, looking far off at the figure of Guin, and said, "Previously, indeed I had none. However, when I saw him just now protecting the creatures of various heavens and earth from the oppression of the celestial I Dao skill, I suddenly felt that I really should do something. It's also a good opportunity for me to repay him for his care and instruction towards you." As his words fell, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable burst into a bright light. His celestial Dao golden core and heaven and earth Dao fruit flew out from his chest, hovering over his shoulders. "I will let this great thousand world be reborn in a new way, wash away the past cause and effect, allowing Celestial Court to not pursue the death of the celestial spirit god, so he can stay here at ease." Search the novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 553, Reshaping the Great Thousand World, hearing the words of Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, and Hao's expression darkened. He realized what the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable intended to do, and he could neither agree with it nor stop it. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable wanted to sacrifice himself to save all living beings. As a son, and Hao could not agree, yet he could not disregard the life and death of all beings to stop him either. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable took a deep look at Guin. The celestial Dao golden core on his shoulder burst forth with golden light, and the heaven and earth Dao fruit rose up, quickly blossoming into expanding spiritual energy that symbolized vigorous life force. And Hao was baptized by the celestial Dao spiritual chi, and his wounds recovered rapidly. He clenched his fists tightly, gritting his teeth as he watched the gradually dissipating figure of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. Guin watched this scene from afar, feeling somewhat conflicted. He guessed that the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable had noticed him, which made him uneasy. However, due to the relationship between the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and Hao, he could not make a move against the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. Now that the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable had chosen to sacrifice himself to protect the beings of great heaven and earth, it was also a good thing for Guin. "I was born in the celestial spirit great world, and owe you a debt of gratitude. If there is a chance in the future, I will assist you in being reborn." That's what Guin thought to himself. He didn't dwell on it any longer, but chose to carefully sense the creation of heaven and earth. He too could create a great thousand world, but even if he did, he could not take a lifespan from his own great thousand world, so he did not do so. Taking a lifespan from within his own great thousand world would be like devouring his own mana, which would not increase his mana. However, even without doing so, he could comprehend the creation of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, thereby enhancing his understanding of the Tao. This was a rare opportunity, an opportunity brought by the self-sacrifice of an innate golden immortal. As the spiritual energy of nature spread, the twisted space of the universe gradually calmed down. The beings of the celestial spirit great world, being the first to be swept by the nature's spiritual energy, recovered their chi power. The celestial vault also quickly took shape, replacing the view of the cosmic starry sky. Everything was returning to normal. At that moment, the immortal seeker unexpectedly flew towards Guin. If it weren't for their past acquaintance, Guin wouldn't have let him approach. With the mystery of the celestial dark purple micro Saint Tao body, even when the immortal seeker arrived in front of Guin, he still couldn't see his true form. Looking at the blurred image of Guin, The immortal seeker took a deep breath and said, "Fellow Taoist, by slaying the celestial spirit god, you will bring immense troubles upon yourself. Each immortal god hold a position in the celestial Tao. Once they fall, the celestial court must be aware. Even if you use cause and effect to isolate this great thousand world, as long as the celestial court wants to investigate, finding you is only a matter of time. Among the celestial court, there are countless beings more powerful than the celestial spirit god. To the immortal gods of the celestial court, nothing is more important than its majesty." Guan looked down at the immortal seeker and asked, "So, what are you trying to say?" The immortal seeker replied, "If fellow Taoist can secure a celestial Tao immortal position before the celestial court becomes aware, with your Tao practice, even if you're punished, the loss won't be significant. Celestial Tao immortal positions are easy to come by. I must be honest. I have an opportunity for a celestial Tao immortal position in my possession." "That's not necessary. You may leave now. Your presence is a threat to me and to this great thousand world." Guan's response elicited a wry smile from the immortal seeker, who immediately bowed and took his leave. Before going far, his soul dispersed. The immortal seeker's method of fleeing this realm was self-demise. Guan wasn't much affected. He turned his gaze toward Enhao. Celestial spirit, immortal venerable, was remaking the Tao rules of the great world, harboring a personal interest in bestowing his Tao inheritance upon Enhao. Even though it couldn't make Enhao's cultivation level soar directly, it could help Enhao cultivate better. Guan didn't interfere, nor did he fear any tricks from the celestial spirit immortal venerable, because he could sense that the causality of the celestial spirit immortal venerable was dissipating, not an act. However, Guan frowned lightly, his gaze shifting to the depths of the universe. As the celestial spirit immortal venerable was reconstructing the rules of the great thousand world, celestial Tao destiny appeared out of thin air along with the Tao. This made Guan very curious about the connection between the heavenly Tao and the great Tao. He had always thought that the heavenly Tao was weaker than the great Tao, or that the heavenly Tao was born based on the great Tao. Now it seemed that this heavenly Tao was as dominant as the great Tao. The figure of the celestial spirit immortal venerable completely faded away, and Enhao had fully recovered from his injuries. Enhao looked around, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. He too felt the destiny of the heavenly Tao. Could it be that all of this was not the doing of the celestial spirit god, and he only chose to act at this juncture? Enhao muttered to himself. His gaze then fell upon Guan and felt his gaze and turned to look. Their eyes met, and Guan understood what was in Enhao's eyes. Enhao couldn't make out Guan's expression, but being watched by Guan made him feel at peace, and a smile appeared on his face. Wasn't this the moment he had been looking forward to? You better think it through. The beings you save will eventually die, and the great thousand world will return to normal in time. Guan's voice reached Enhao's ears. Enhao smiled and retorted, "Master, how many of the beings you saved are still alive? They will eventually die, and you still took action, didn't you?" Guan asked, "Are you willing to let go of an Xian? And your wife, your children, can you truly cut all ties? Didn't you make arrangements for them? The only person I'm sorry to is you. I've lived for nearly 10,000 years and never repaid you, only caused you worries." Enhao spoke to Guan with a look of guilt. Guan really wanted to say that it was actually quite a simple task and no trouble at all. But looking at Enhao's expression, he knew that nothing he said would change Enhao's choice. Now, Guan was strong, but not strong enough. At least not enough to free the great thousand world from the heavenly Tao, at least not enough to develop the world he lived in according to his wishes. However, Guan was quite relieved to see Enhao take on such responsibility. He couldn't change such an outcome, but he could leave Enhao a way out. Guan turned and disappeared into the void. More and more divine senses swept across, able to lock onto Enhao, yet not daring to come close. The previous battle made them shudder. Even though they hadn't seen clearly what had happened, the shadow of the eternal infinite divine sword and the grand and spectacular celestial I Dao skill still gave them chills. Even Taoist Zhang Zizai, Immortal, and profound Yuan Free Immortal would feel like they could be annihilated at any moment when facing the recent battle. And Hao looked toward the celestial spirit great world, his gaze filled with affection, and slowly raised his arms, murmuring, "Young immortal emperor, I will carry out the task you left unfinished." Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, an extant celestial demon child, Chun Chuan, and others had not been stripped of their mana and chi power by the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. They were always discussing the battle situation. Guan appeared out of nowhere beside an exile. As he appeared, the crowd immediately gathered around. "Master, did you make a move? Was that sword intent just now the eternal infinite divine sword? Master, what's the situation in outer heaven now? And how in Zhu Shi? Who won and who lost? Who was the person who spoke earlier? They sounded so arrogant. I wonder how high their cultivation level is." Everyone kept asking, curious and excited. With the protection of the Taoist field of the beginningless, they hadn't truly felt the oppression from the outside world. Guan looked toward the celestial vault. "From now on, you will never see those two again." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned, their excitement immediately extinguished, and they subconsciously looked at an exile. They weren't familiar with Zhu Shi. They only knew that an Xian and an Hao were as close as siblings. An Xian, too, was stunned. She didn't have a breakdown of emotions, but looked at Guan and asked, "Master, have you seen him already?" "Yes." "Then let it be." An Xian was very calm, and Guan did not say more. He turned to the others. "A new era is coming. The universe will become infinitely vast. From now on, you will no longer live in the great heaven and earth, but in the great thousand world." The great thousand world. Everyone was astounded. They believed Gu An's words, and so they began to fantasize about the vastness of the great thousand world. And Xingtian was also somewhat dazed. Although he had cut off the cause and effect with Hao, he had always hoped to meet Hao. Would he really never be able to meet him from now on? Ia the Novel Fire. NE*T website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. "Look!" Celestial Cyan suddenly pointed at the sky, exclaiming loudly. Everyone turned their heads to look and saw a sun appearing in the sky that was growing rapidly larger. Celestial Demon Child was about to ask Gu, and when suddenly, an unimaginable shockwave descended from the sky, leaving everyone in a bewildered state. The scene seemed to freeze. Everyone was fixed in place. Only Gu could still move. Guan looked up and could see Hao's figure, which was fading away. And Hao had chosen the same path as his father, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable had chosen to sacrifice himself to reshape the Tao rules of the Great Thousand World, and Hao had chosen to sacrifice himself to reassemble the shattered Great Thousand World. And Hao was able to do this because he had received the Tao of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. He had become the controller of the Great Thousand World. In order for all living beings to quickly survive the calamities set by the heavenly Tao, he chose to sacrifice himself. In this catastrophe, Zhu Shi was sent out of the universe by a mortal seeker. The celestial spirit god was captured, and both the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable and Hao fell one after another. At first glance, it seemed there were no victors. Guan sighed at the capriciousness of fate, but he was also looking forward to the brand new Great Thousand World. Anyway, this calamity was just a node in his life. He needed to keep striving to become stronger, intuition telling him that one day he would no longer be able to conceal himself, and he would need to directly face the might of the celestial court. When that day comes, whether he would compromise and ascend to immortality or make other plans would depend on how high his cultivation level was. Guan retracted his gaze and walked toward his own pavilion. As for the immobilized crowd, they wouldn't have any issues. Guan deliberately allowed Hao's power to enter the dojo, letting them rapidly get through the upcoming drastic changes of heaven and earth like all living beings. When they awoke, they would only think they had a dream. Guin suddenly looked in one direction, a trace of surprise in his voice. Everything in the universe was still under Enhao's power, yet Shun Jun was unaffected, still fervently drawing in her house. Guin felt a special aura from Shun Jun, one that he couldn't deduce. This made him even more curious. What kind of great Tao had Shun Jun stepped into? As Guin was pondering, a powerful light that drained all colors from everything descended from the sky, enveloping his figure and all of existence. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 554, Nine Heavens Cyan Bird. Taiching golden immortal sunlight was brilliant, filtering through the gaps in the leaves and leaving patches of light across the grass in the forest. An Xin sat on a rock beside a stream, delivering a sermon to a group of boys and girls. Her voice was mesmerizing, so much so that even the birds perched on the trees cocked their heads to listen attentively. She had been speaking for half a day now, her patience greater than before, as a gentle smile constantly graced her face. Seeing the Qinquan sect disciples enraptured by her Taoist teachings, an Xin turned her head to look around, but couldn't find Guin. However, she believed her master was still there. Indeed, he was. 10 yards away, on an old tree, Guin was lying on a branch, hesitating as he stared at his attribute list. Name: Guin. Lifespan: 9,555/89,904,572,611. Physique: primordial infinite body. Cultivation level: heaven balancing golden immortal realm perfection. 100 years had passed since the Great Thousand Worlds restructuring, a cataclysmic process. But under Enhao and the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable's protection, all beings were unaffected, feeling only as if they had sunk into a profound dream. Upon awakening from the dream, every major sect realized that the world had become boundlessly vast, so much so that even beings above the heaven and earth flying immortal realm who flew towards outer heaven were utterly astounded by the current world. The endless expanse of the world, a thicker celestial Tao light layer, and the universe had become even more dim, and how had gathered all the worlds within the cosmos to create the entirely new celestial spirit great world. The celestial spirit great world was more than 10,000 times larger than the celestial spirit great world. In the previous 10 millennia, not only the celestial spirit great world had faced calamities of the heavenly Tao, but other great worlds experienced the same. Without the protection of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable, many had long been eradicated of all life. Thus, after the restructuring of the celestial spirit great world, the heavens and the earth became vast yet desolate. With the world so infinitely vast and the number of living beings not even close to the new world's capacity, the calamities of the heavenly Tao receded. With no impetuousness left in nature's spiritual energy, young immortal emperor's proposal had been implemented by Enhao, and everything was evolving for the better. Worth mentioning is that after Enhao's sacrifice, his wife and children received considerable cosmic destiny, and within just 100 years, Guin witnessed the birth of a genius in the family with a potential lifespan of 8,000 years. Guin wasn't sure if it was the world's favor or Enhao's will that looked after his descendants, but according to his calculations, the family would rise in the next 10,000 years, eventually becoming one of the strong families in the world. Right now, Guin's hesitation was not about the affairs of others, but his own concerns. He planned to first comprehensively enhance his own Taoist techniques. Then, after accumulating another 200 billion years of lifespan, he could strike for an even higher realm. A lifespan nearing 900 billion years seemed massive, but in truth, if he intended to enhance every aspect, it would probably be spent soon. No matter, he must improve. Even though the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable had already reshaped the order of the Great Tao in the Great Thousand World, and the celestial spirit god had not fallen, temporarily avoiding the celestial court's notice. He had to maintain the pace of getting stronger. After this increase in strength, he would start dealing with the celestial spirit god. Goon began to utilize his lifespan breakthrough. You have activated the lifespan breakthrough function. Based on your current realm, the following breakthrough locations have been selected for you. 1. Ascending to Yellow Heaven. 2. Celestial Extreme, 9 Heavens. 3. Abyss Tao, C4. Path of the Great Tao. 5. Eastern Sea Celestial Palace. 6. Primordial Emperor Domain. 7. Profound Abyss Divine Pool. 8. Golden Immortal Ancestor Tree. 9. Ling Mountain. Looking at the choices that had popped up before him, many of which he was seeing for the first time, Guin couldn't help but be moved by the infinite vastness of the Great Tao. The path of the Great Tao connected the 3,000 great worlds, and beyond the Great World were many more mysterious places. Guan's previous breakthrough had taken him to the Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens, which left a deep impression on him. After some contemplation, he felt that returning to the Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens was the best option. He was uncertain of the other locations, and although the Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens had powerful beings, they were few in number. With his decision made, Guin chose the Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens for teleportation. Teleporting to Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens will require the consumption of 10 billion years of lifespan. Do you wish to proceed? Continue. Guin closed his eyes after making his choice, and that long-absent sensation of dizziness appeared. After a while, Guin opened his eyes, and what met his gaze was an endless sea of clouds, majestic and vast. The sky was still so high, with no land in sight, and no matter which direction he looked, he saw nothing but the sea of clouds and the sky. He immediately activated his lifespan barrier and sat down to meditate on the spot. Without saying a word, he began to evolve and improve, starting with his physique. Each time, Guin invested 1 billion years of lifespan, operating slowly. It took nearly 4 billion years to advance from the primordial Tao golden body to the primordial infinite body. This time would surely take even more. Billion after billion years, Guin was collected and composed, not feeling the slightest bit of heartache. In the end, it took approximately 50 billion years for the primordial infinite body to advance to the primordial reincarnation undying body. As the final prompt fell, an enormous surge of Tao spiritual qi flooded towards Guin. The boundless sea of clouds began to churn in a very short time. Luckily, not as dramatically as the previous breakthrough. Guin closed his eyes and began to immerse himself. An hour later, his physique's transformation was successful. With the primordial reincarnation undying body, not only did his physique grow stronger, but the power of the great Tao could no longer control his flesh, and it was not worn down by reincarnation. Even if his lifespan reached its limit, his body could exist forever. Now, he could enter reincarnation in his physical form as smoothly as a fish takes to water. Guin opened his eyes, and his gaze fell on the cultivation technique column in his attribute list. Upgrade the main technique first. Great Tao, Great Freedom, as you wish Bible. He began to invest lifespan for evolution, investing 36 billion years of lifespan at once. The Great Tao, Great Freedom, as you wish Bible was elevated to the Taoist dominator skill, reaching an in-depth level of understanding. Tao spiritual qi surged toward him once again, and an endless stream of Taoist technique memories burst forth in his mind. Sar the Nelfer. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The Taoist dominator skill, as the name implies, could dominate the Great Tao. Once mastered, Guin could comprehend any kind of Great Tao, and in facing any kind of Great Tao, he could discern its weaknesses in an extremely short time. Most importantly, this technique could merge the 3,000 Great Tao into one force, aptly named the Dominator's power. Another half an hour passed, and Guin successfully mastered the Taoist dominator skill. He didn't have time to experience it in depth, and continued to enhance other Taoist techniques. Regardless of the tier the Taoist technique reached, lifespan evolution could always allow Gu and to master it within half an hour, which was also a significant advantage. The Great Thousand Following Heart to Void skill was upgraded to the Sun and Moon Selfless Divine Tao, consuming nearly 50 billion years of lifespan. This technique helped Gu and to conceal his cultivation level and aura. Even those with a realm higher than his could not see through it. Though, of course, if the disparity in cultivation was too vast, it might not remain hidden, which was why he continued to elevate this technique. The Sun and Moon Selfless Divine Tao was even more domineering, allowing Gu to disappear into the order of the Great Tao. Even if he was still present, no one would detect him. He could even turn his aura into the sun, moon, and stars, perfectly concealing himself. Again, the inheritance took half an hour. After the inheritance ended, Gu's eyes turned to the secret skills, preparing to upgrade his combat methods. Just then, a vast aura descended, one that far surpassed that of the heaven-balancing golden immortal, causing a slight change in Gu's expression. He looked up. He saw a gigantic cyan bird appear in the sky, its wings spread wide, eclipsing the sun. Its feathers shimmered with the colors of the rainbow, like a godly bird from creation, radiating an endless ancient and holy aura. This cyan bird was by far the most colossal creature Gu had ever seen. Even set against the celestial extreme nine heavens, the celestial vault seemed almost incapable of containing it. Gu hurled a lifespan detection at the cyan bird. Nine heavens cyan bird. Early stage of Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm 218,726,929 702/50 000 000 000 000 //50 000 000 more than 200 billion years old. A lifespan of 50 trillion years. Truly terrifying. Killing it would direct unlock the ability for 1 trillion years of lifespan. But the words Tai Ching Golden Immortal only allowed Gu to contemplate the idea. Of course, even if Gu had the ability to slay it, he would not take action. That was not his style. Moreover, he suspected that behind the nine heavens cyan bird, there stood even more powerful immortals, like the nine heavens immortal emperor. As Gu marveled at the nine heavens cyan bird's lifespan, the bird suddenly descended, landing 10,000 miles away. 10,000 miles is a long distance for mortals, but to the nine heavens cyan bird, a single movement of its claws could reach Gu's dojo. This made Gu tense, ready to teleport away at any moment. The nine heavens cyan bird folded its wings and perched on the sea of clouds, its head reaching unscalable heights. Gu then saw a figure emerge, the white-robed woman known as the Nine Heavens Immortal Emperor, appearing atop the head of the nine heavens cyan bird. As before, Gu was still unable to perform lifespan detection on the nine heavens Immortal Emperor, indicating that her true body was not present. Two powerful entities appeared beside her, causing Gu to dare not continue his evolution. He decided to wait for the nine heavens Immortal Emperor and the nine heavens cyan bird to leave before resuming. If they refused to leave, he would have no choice but to teleport back to the celestial spirit great world. Search the Novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Although he had already mastered the Sacred Heart Sword Tao, which merged with the River of Sword Tao, deemed an independent existence, he felt he couldn't solely rely on the Sacred Heart Sword Tao. He needed stronger sword techniques as his trump card. The eternal infinite divine sword evolved into the 3,000 slaying Tao swords, achieving the mastery realm, consuming 80 billion-year lifespan. During the half-hour inheritance, neither the Nine Heavens Immortal Emperor nor the Nine Heavens Cyan Bird returned. Thus, Guin continued to invest his lifespan in evolution. Profound yellow eternal Tao step advanced into Taoless celestial net step, consuming 42 billion-year lifespan and reaching the realm of integration. Celestial dark purple micro Saint Tao body evolved into Hongmeng void golden body, also at the realm of integration, consuming 76 billion-year lifespan. After upgrading the most core Taoist techniques, Guin turned his attention to the Great Soul capturing Immortal technique. This technique could perform soul search, but as the enemy's realm was higher, the difficulty of soul search increased. It needed enhancement. This was still the transformation of soul capturing technique that Jiang Xiong had taught him years ago. Guin spent 130 billion-year lifespan in one breath, allowing the Great Soul capturing Immortal technique to advance several levels, finally evolving into Calamity Absolute I. Calamity Absolute I could not only perform soul search, but also bring bad luck to the enemy, with the nature of the calamity shaped by the caster's imagination. A very domineering divine skill. That's it. Search * the novel. F. Ire. Inti website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Guin dared not continue evolving because, accounting for the lifespan barrier's consumption, he only had 230 billion-year lifespan left and still needed 100 billion-year lifespan to teleport back. After a series of evolutions and enhancements, Guin felt a complete transformation even though his cultivation level had not increased. His strength had greatly changed. Now, handling Celestial Spirit God should be effortless. Thinking this, Guin stood up. He gazed at the constantly churning sea of clouds, as if for one last look, since he definitely needed to change locations upon the next breakthrough. The recent appearance of the Nine Heavens Immortal Emperor and Nine Heavens Cyan Bird was definitely not a coincidence. They must have intended to investigate his whereabouts. Even if their words didn't directly reflect it, he had to stay alert. Guin chose to teleport back, and as he thought, he vanished on the spot. Guin returned to the forest near the Qinquan sect and could no longer see an Xin and the others. Unable to find him, an Xin returned to the dojo to cultivate. Guin did not hurry back. He jumped down from a tree, crossed a creek, and sat down on a large stone by the creek. Lifting his right hand, palm facing upwards, a skull appeared in his palm, the size of a pebble, indeed that of the Celestial Spirit God. The disheveled Celestial Spirit God opened his eyes and looked up at Guin, his expression becoming calm. After a century of suppression, he had adjusted his mindset and was prepared to face any outcome. Guin's pupils suddenly turned deep red, and the pupils of the Celestial Spirit God facing him involuntarily widened. Then his expression turned dull. Calamity Absolute I. He began to scour the memories of the Celestial Spirit God. The morning sun shone down, casting a long shadow of Guin. After a long while, Guin's eyes returned to their normal color, and his brows furrowed. The memories of the Celestial Spirit God were too simple. Spending years meditating under the World Gate, much of his memory was blank, presumably related to the Celestial Court. However, Guin still obtained some useful information, such as why the Celestial Spirit God plotted against the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. Many years ago, the Celestial Spirit God could have obliterated the Celestial Spirit Great World, but he wanted to obtain the world punishment Tao Pearl held by the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. The world punishment Tao Pearl, born from the Great Tao, was a supreme treasure that could be used in battle and for comprehending the Tao, with infinite marvelous uses. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable dared not readily use the pearl, fearing its master would come searching. The owner of the world punishment Tao Pearl was the Emperor Zway. Through the memory of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, Guin saw the Emperor Zway. This Emperor Zway looked exactly like the unparalleled Emperor Ziwei that the Black Profound Emperor had encountered in his lifetime. Guan guessed that the Emperor Ziwei was the reincarnation body of the Emperor Ziwei. Great powers project across the heavens, manifesting reincarnation, which is common. How formidable was the Emperor Ziwei, able to fight against hundreds at the same realm, and even force enemies to retreat. No wonder, being the reincarnation of the Emperor Ziwei. As Guan reflected inwardly, the celestial spirit god regained his senses. Startled, he looked at Guan and asked, "What have you done to me?" Guan looked down at him and inquired, "Do you want to die? Or do you want to live?" When Guan questioned whether the celestial spirit god's apocalyptic acts were related to the celestial court, and the celestial spirit god admitted it was his own selfishness, Guan actually felt a trace of respect for him. The celestial spirit god was bold and accountable. It seemed a pity to kill such a person directly. The destruction by the celestial spirit god was nefarious to living beings, but from a cosmic perspective, he protected the cosmic order. Of course, whether the celestial spirit god wanted to live depended on his attitude. Faced with Guan's question, the celestial spirit god furrowed his brows. After a moment of silence, he said, "I cannot possibly serve you. My fate today is merely reaping what I sowed. Had I not coveted the treasure and followed the heavenly Tao earlier, it would not have come to this. Just kill me." Having said so, the celestial spirit god closed his eyes. Suddenly, Guan asked, "Have you ever been immortal?" Hearing this, the celestial spirit god opened his eyes, looking at Guan in surprise. In the memory of the celestial spirit god, he was born a favored child of heaven and was taken as a disciple by the Emperor Ziwei early on. He stood above the masses from birth. Guan looked down at him and said coldly, "To kill you now would be too easy for you. Go to the human world and experience the struggles of humanity. In the eyes of immortal gods, mortal spirits are no different from dust, but how would you know the effort mortal spirits make just to survive?" As his words fell, Guan flipped his hand and threw the celestial spirit god into the creek. As the celestial spirit god fell, he looked at Guan. In his view, Guan was so magnificent. Indeed, he did not understand human suffering, but at that moment he understood how mortals looked up to immortal gods. His vision quickly plunged into darkness. After Guan flipped his hand to let him go, he used his own divine sense to cast him into the cycle of reincarnation. After contemplating the Taoist dominator skill and the sun and moon selfless divine Tao, Guan could simply manipulate the path of reincarnation and make the celestial spirit god reincarnate. It was not difficult for him. He made the celestial spirit god be born in the celestial spirit great world to prevent him from escaping. The celestial spirit god was already bound by the Guan divine Tao and his divine soul sealed. Without Guan's action, he would remain forever in the cycle of reincarnation, unable to escape. Search the novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 556. Guan's story grew and entered the Taoist field of the beginningless, and from a distance he saw two people engaged in combat high up on the mountains. It was LV Xian and Chun Chuan. These two were the most combative, even more so than the Blood Prison Great Saint, but they were merely sparring, not fighting out of anger, so Guan never stopped them. Watching Chun Chuan's elegance in the sky, Guan was very gratified. In his memories, he had never seen Xiao Chuan so spirited and confident. He also pondered when to let Chun Chuan recover his memories from his past life, but he felt that such matters shouldn't be rushed. Letting nature take its course was best. A figure suddenly appeared beside Guan. It was an Exon who looked at Guan with a grievance and said, "Master, why didn't you say a word to me when you left yesterday?" You're the master, or am I the master?" "Ah, I just wanted to go out with you for a bit. If you're bored, you could go to the Chinquin sect. Many new things will happen there, and I will also go to see the excitement. Really? Really? Guan was not lying. With the reshaping of the celestial spirit great world, various great heaven and earth started to interconnect. Sects began to wander the world, and in the coming years, the entire celestial spirit great world would embrace a thriving vitality. A new era was beginning. Sects vied for supremacy. Different great heaven and earth harbored different immortal cultivation philosophies, and these philosophies would clash, creating more sparks. The next era would be unprecedented. Those great powers who survived from the old era would rise to the pinnacle of authority, and the new great world would be far stronger than before. The new rules of heaven and earth would conceive more geniuses, even elevating the potential of these talents. Guan felt the destiny of heaven and earth, already foreseeing the birth of many geniuses with the ultimate lifespan of 9,999 years. He was very much looking forward to it. As the master and disciple chatted, they walked along the mountain path. The gentle breeze made an Xian a bit distracted. Unconsciously, she was already 9,521 years old. She felt her life experiences weren't rich, but this also meant she had lived a peaceful and comfortable life. She turned her head to look at her master beside her. His profile sent her heart into a state of tranquility. Ia the Novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. She, too, began to feel anticipation. 10,000 years later, a million years later, or even 10 million years later, would she still be able to follow by her master's side? If she followed, what kinds of views would she see? The spring festival of the Chinquin sect had just ended, and the shadows of cultivators could be seen everywhere between the mountains. Most of the cultivators were flying in the same direction, towards a giant city surrounded by mountains on all sides, bursting with rays of light like a mirage, brimming with the grandeur of an immortal city. This city was Chinquin sect's main city. 1,000 years had passed since the great world was reshaped. The Chinquin sect seized the opportunity to develop quickly, not only becoming the leader of the Orthodox Taoist sect on the Nine-Spirit continent, but also establishing prestige in the surrounding seas. This year, Chinquin sect planned to hold the 100 Teachings Conference, inviting hundreds of Orthodox Taoist sects from inside and outside the seas to discuss and exchange Taoist techniques. This was the first time for Chinquin sect to hold such an event, making Chinquin sect's main city extraordinarily lively. Within the main city, the library pavilion was packed. Under Zin's guidance, the structure of Chinquin sect was almost identical to the Supreme sect's. However, Chinquin sect was far away from the Supreme sect, so the two sects had not intersected for the time being. Why is Chinquin Venerable sold out again? With the foundation of the Chinquin sect, why can't you print a few more copies? A young male disciple stood in front of the counter, glaring at the library pavilion disciple, and demanded. The library pavilion disciple spread his hands helplessly and said, "Brother, shouting at me is no use. I'm just in charge of selling." The young male disciple glared at him and left with a flick of his sleeve. Then another disciple approached the counter to inquire about the book Chinquin Venerable. At this moment, on the second floor of the library pavilion, Guan, dressed in blue robes, stood in front of a row of bookshelves browsing books. Celestial Demon Child came over and saw the title of the book he was looking at, not helping but curl her lips in distaste. "Young master, even a book like this is worth your time?" Outside the dojo, Guan had instructed not to call him master, but young master instead. Although Celestial Demon Child didn't understand, she thought calling him young master was quite nice. At least it made their relationship seem more equal, which often led her to wild fantasies. Guan, holding Nine Spirits Hero Legend, smiled softly and said, "As long as it's a book, it's worth reading." Since he started writing within the Chinquin sect, a trend of novels had been set off, and Nine Spirits Hero Legend was one such novel about the protagonist's adventures, clearly trying to imitate his style. Hearing Gu An's words, Celestial Demon Child pursed her lips and then turned to leave. She planned to take a walk in the city. With her cultivation level of the loose Immortal realm, she was considered a great cultivator within Chinquan sect and wouldn't run into trouble, especially with Gu there. After Celestial Demon Child left, Guin continued reading. It wasn't long before two women ascended to the second floor, none other than Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai. Since being saved by an Exine, they had lived on the Nine-Spirit continent. Later, seeing the Chinquan sects rise to power, they voluntarily joined, and now they were also disciples of the Chinquan sect. In reality, given their status, they could become elders, but they didn't want to be too tied down to the Chinquan sect, knowing that they would eventually leave. Sis, why did we come here? Tang Kai asked in confusion. The library pavilion was full of miscellaneous books. If one sought the pursuit of Taoist techniques, they would visit the scripture pavilion. Li Xuanyu answered, just to look around. Your heart is too impatient. It's good to temper it. Her gaze swept through the second floor, passing over each disciple as if seeking something. However, after looking around, she did not find the person she was looking for, and a look of disappointment flashed in her eyes. Tang Kai, upon hearing Li Xuanyu's words, immediately felt dissatisfied. She had just completed a meditation retreat of 800 years, and still she was considered impatient. She was about to retort when she saw Li Xuanyu walk toward the stairs leading to the third floor. I definitely am not impatient. These years, Tang Kai caught up with Li Xuanyu and tried to defend herself. Senior Sister Li. A voice came through, bringing Li Xuanyu's steps to a halt. She turned to look and saw Guin, holding a book and walking between two rows of bookshelves. Li Xuanyu felt a little dazed, having not seen him for 10,000 years. Guin seemed totally different from the person in her memories. The Guin in her memory was cautious and reserved, but the Guin before her now was handsome and extraordinary, seemingly an immortal walking amongst mortals. Tang Kai glanced at Guin, her expression one of suspicion. She was astounded at her first sight of Guin. What a handsome man. This was only her personal judgment, and not a case of love at first sight. She had wandered the world and seen many people, but had never come across a cultivator with a presence like Gu Ans. Even her beloved Liya did not have an aura to match Gu Ans. What attracted her more to Liya was his heroism and loyalty. Guin walked over to Li Xuanyu and asked with a smile, Senior Sister Li, don't you recognize me? Li Xuanyu came back to her senses and said with emotion, Of course, I recognize you. To be honest, the reason I've come here is to look for you. After all, your disciple is also on this continent, and everything about the Chinquan sect is a lot like the Supreme sect. I guess it had something to do with you. She didn't know that Gu and was the supporting Dao sword venerable, but the strength of an Xan proved Gu An's Dao practice had already surpassed hers. The reason she wanted to find Gu and was merely to express her gratitude in person. She was not foolish, and Zin's rescue surely must have been at Gu An's behest. I don't have such great capabilities. How about we find an end to catch up on old times? Guin asked with a smile, and naturally, Li Xuanyu had no objections. Guin did not neglect Tang Kai and introduced himself to her. After exchanging pleasantries, the three of them went downstairs. Noticing Guin spending money to buy the Nine Spirits hero legend, Tang Kai's expression became odd. Now aware that Guin was Zin's master, she held him in high esteem, but she hadn't imagined that such a great cultivator would read such trivial texts. Shouldn't a great cultivator be delving into the great Tao? Li Xuanyu, however, didn't mind. She knew Guin liked reading books. Seeing that Guin still had the same hobby made her feel a sense of closeness, as though the distance between them had narrowed. Later on, the three of them sat down at the closest inn, and after inquiring about each other's experiences, Guin turned the conversation to Liya, as Liya was the hub of their shared connections. Mention of Liya immediately excited Tang Kai, as his fame had already spread to the Nine-Spirit continent. Liya with the 9 extremes sacred heart sword in hand, might not yet be the world's preeminent sword cultivator, but his strength was already formidable. Coupled with his adventurous spirit, his fame was widespread. People say he's made enemies with the Shaking Light sect saint and is being hunted by them. I want to help him, but our sister said I'd just be in the way. Guin, since you are Li Yas' junior brother, can you help him? Tang Kai looked at Guin with a tone full of supplication. She had been through a lot with Li Ya and knew the hardships that lay behind his fame. He must be seriously injured again, otherwise it wouldn't have come to this point of enmity. Before Guin could reply, Li Xuanyu spoke up coldly. Tang Kai, don't bother junior brother Gu with Li Yas' affairs. Those were his own choices. Junior brother Gu has already saved us. We owe him a great debt of gratitude. How can we trouble him further? But there are no buts, Li Xuanyu said decisively, leaving Tang Kai with no choice but to nod in resignation. Guin looked at Li Xuanyu, finding her solemnity a bit amusing, and replied, Shaking Light Saint sect is indeed formidable and is said to have the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, who is of the 6th heaven of the immortal path. They're not easy to provoke. 6th heaven of the immortal path. Li Xuanyu's complexion turned unnaturally pale, while Tang Kai grew tense. Guin comforted them. Don't worry. With the immortal path ultimate treasure, divine exotic city, and the 9 extremes sacred heart sword in his hands, Senior Brother Li is a man of great destiny. He will surmount the danger. That sword is the world's foremost divine sword. Hearing his words, Li Xuanyu could only nod, while Tang Kai sank into deep worry. Afterward, Guin brought up the 100 Teachings Conference of the Qinquan sect. Although Li Xuanyu was still engaging in the conversation, the mood had clearly grown colder. Half an hour later, Guin said goodbye to the 2 women. Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai stood at the entrance of the inn, watching Guin walk away. Sister, he's Li Yas' junior brother, and thus from the Supreme Sect. Why has he come alone to this faraway place? Tang Kai asked curiously. Li Xuanyu, looking at Guin's receding figure, said, Perhaps he's burdened with something, forcing him to leave his homeland. In life, we're often compelled by circumstances beyond our control. Upon hearing this, Tang Kai felt there was a story behind Guin's silhouette, much like Li Ya. Just then, they saw a stunningly beautiful woman swiftly emerge from the crowd, quickly wrap her arm around Guin's, and move forward with laughter and conversation, their intimacy evident. They soon disappeared into the throng of people. Tang Kai opened her mouth as if to ask something, but didn't manage to articulate her question. Li Xuanyu, too, remained silent. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Guin's gaze fell on the side of the street, where a group of beggars squatted in front of a courtyard wall. Among them, a 14 or 15-year-old boy sat with his head down. On closer examination, he had no legs and only 2 fingers on his right hand, a sight that made it difficult to imagine what kind of torment he had endured. This boy was a reincarnation of the celestial spirit god. This was his 39th time being reincarnated. He was born in a village, and before he was 1 year old, his family was raided by bandits, who killed everyone and sold him off. After a life of constant upheaval and numerous struggles, he ended up in such a tragic state. Despite the suffering of the celestial spirit god, Guin had no intention of intervening. Nevertheless, in every life of the celestial spirit god, he would observe. It wasn't to ridicule the celestial spirit god, but rather to help him recall some of his previous lives' memories at the time of his death, to let him feel the disparity between immortal gods and mortals. Oddly enough, Guin had not deliberately made the celestial spirit god experience a life of suffering, but most of his lives in the cycle of reincarnation were miserable, and even if born in happiness, he tended to die young, living to a maximum of 70 years in the best-case scenario. On second thought, it was normal, as most mortals have difficulty living past 70. In the scorching summer, this life of the celestial spirit god would end on the flourishing streets, with no one caring about his death. Not until a house servant from a wealthy nearby household dragged his body away, ultimately dumped in the wilderness and devoured by scavenging wolves. And so, Gun merely stood on the street watching the celestial spirit god, with people coming and going as if in a dream. Search * the novel F. Ire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. This live's celestial spirit, named Little Five, had been adopted by an old beggar. He was the 5th child taken in by the old man, hence the name Little Five. At the beginning of the year, the old beggar passed away, and Little Five now followed the eldest child for survival, presently in the throes of illness. To seek medicinal herbs, the eldest was at that moment being beaten by the servants of a medicine shop on another street. This city bustled with such vibrancy. People were drinking and making merry, spilling wine and meat on their tables. Some were reciting poetry and discussing romance under the trees, while others were barely breathing, lying on their beds as their family fought over money for medicine. There were people who went about their routines like zombies, thinking not of the future, but of ending the day's task sooner. The countless conditions of sentient beings unfolded before Gu'anus' eyes, his expression unchanging, just quietly watching Little Five. Little Five seemed to feel something and slowly lifted his head. The streets were noisy and busy before his eyes. The close proximity of prosperity felt unattainably distant. In a daze, he saw an additional figure on the street, with people passing right through it, which was very eerie. His hands trembling, he raised them and rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. Indeed, there was a figure that no one else but he could see. Could that be an immortal god? Xiao Wu spoke weakly, while the 2 beggars beside him were asleep and didn't hear his murmur, and the other beggars didn't pay attention to him either, because everyone knew he was dying. Guan was surprised that Xiao Wu could see him. He hadn't intended for Xiao Wu to be able to see him. With that thought, Guan willed his presence to deepen, and he disappeared from Xiao Wu's sight in an instant. Seeing that he had disappeared, Xiao Wu instinctively looked in other directions, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see Guan again. It was just an illusion after all. I knew someone like me couldn't possibly encounter an immortal god. Xiao Wu hung his head low again, continuing to endure the suffering from his illness. Until dusk, a beggar walked over, quivering. It was Xiao Wu's older brother, known as Lao Da. He squatted in front of Xiao Wu, placed a medicinal herb bag stained with blood on the ground, shook Xiao Wu, but there was no response from him. Lao Da's eyes widened with bloodshot eyes, and his right hand trembled as it moved towards Xiao Wu's nose. Soon he got a fright. He didn't push Xiao Wu away. Instead, he lifted Xiao Wu onto his back and, taking the medicinal herb bag, walked away. Following that, Lao Da carried Xiao Wu on his back and went to all the large and small pharmacies in the city, but no one was willing to treat Xiao Wu. Out of desperation, Lao Da gritted his teeth and carried Xiao Wu out of the city. As night fell, Lao Da didn't look back amidst the fading hustle and bustle behind him and pressed forward with unwavering determination. Lao Da carried Xiao Wu aimlessly forward, not knowing where he should go, but he was unwilling to give up. It was only when he heard a wolf's howl that he finally snapped out of it, by which time he had already lost his way. Don't be afraid. Xiao Wu, Big Brother will definitely save you, definitely. Lao Da murmured to himself softly. He was trying to bolster his own courage. There were always legends in the countryside of immortals living deep in the mountains. The physicians in the human world were not willing to save his brother, so he had to seek out an immortal. He's already dead. Where do you think you're going to take him? Such deep brotherly love. Well, we could save him, but you'll have to give something in return. 3 feminine voices rang out, coquettish and seductive, making one's imagination run wild. Except in the darkness of the night, they seemed sinister and frightening. Fear gripped Lauda internally, his filthy face unable to hide the terror as he swallowed and asked, "What do I have to give to save my brother? Could it be a demon?" Their voices didn't sound like those of immortals. Lauda thought so, and without any other options available, he braced himself and inquired further. Suddenly, a cold wind blew from the depths of the forest, forcing Lauda to instinctively step back. On the trunk of the tree before him appeared 3 white foxes, smirking cunningly, their eyes glowing green in the dark night, which was quite terrifying. Lauda's legs trembled with fear. The sight of a demon directly drowned his heart in terror. Yet he did not throw Xiao Wu down and flee. One of the white foxes chuckled, "Become our servant, and we will save him." Lauda mustered his courage and asked, "Just as a servant?" "As a servant for life, until you die of old age. Oh, by the way, if your brother wants to live, he must borrow someone else's life. Before dawn, you must kill a person and bring them before us. Otherwise, once daylight comes, even if the celestial spirit, God himself, appeared, there would be no reversing fate." The white fox in the middle sneered coldly, her words sending a chill through Lao to kill. Kill someone? Search the novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 558 The Legend of Lu Qiuxin. The night was like water. 3 white foxes teasingly stared at the boss, as if looking at prey. Faced with their gaze, the boss was engulfed in an inner struggle, and little 5 on his back had no breath left, his body growing stiffer, which made his heart even more anxious. Although he was a beggar, living at the lowest strata of society, many people humiliated him, but he had never thought about killing anyone. At most, he just wanted to beat up those who bullied him. In his view, killing was an unforgivable act, but his younger brother, little 5, was still waiting for him to rescue. The boss took a deep breath. He looked up at the 3 white foxes and gritted his teeth. "This is it. Take my life to save my brother, and let my brother serve you as a servant for a lifetime." Little 5 was disabled, and life was hard to manage by himself. If he could be tied to these 3 demons, perhaps he could find a better way out. Although demons were not as powerful as the immortal gods, they were still not comparable to ordinary people. What if the demons could make little 5 grow legs? Hearing what the boss said, the 3 white foxes were stunned for a moment, and then they started giggling. "Your brother is a cripple. Is he supposed to serve us? Or should we serve him?" "Mortal, you think too much. Such a coward doesn't even deserve to serve us." Facing the demon's mockery, the boss was not angry, just more nervous and uneasy. He finally had a chance to save his brother. How could he give up? "As long as you are willing to go into the city and kill, we can make your brother normal, repairing the physical defects. And there are plenty of evil people in this city. It's not just your brother you'd be saving," one white fox said with a profound meaning, which made a new light shine in the boss' eyes. At the same time, Guan stood under a nearby tree watching this scene. These 3 white foxes were Tier 2 demons, comparable to the Foundation establishment realm, still unable to undergo transformation. What they said was true, hoping the boss would kill the evil people in the city. They dared not act personally, because there were immortal cultivation sects nearby that would capture and kill misbehaving demons, thinking that using the boss as a proxy would be enough to deceive everyone. Guan had no intention of interfering. Even if people died because of this, he wouldn't care. He had rescued too many beings before. Now he wouldn't hesitate over the life and death of one person. Of course, if someone truly moved his heart, he would act as he wished. Eventually, the boss agreed. He put down little 5 and then returned to the city alone. As soon as he left, the 3 white foxes surrounded little 5 and began casting spells to protect his soul. Little 5's lifespan and maximum lifespan were not merely 15 years old. Indeed, they had ways to save his life, but from now on, it would be hard for him to sever ties with demons. Guan watched for a while, and then disappeared from the spot. Even though there were 3 white foxes altering his fate, Little Five's life was destined not to ascend to immortality. This was the punishment Guven had in mind for the celestial spirit god. Guven wouldn't deliberately manipulate the celestial spirit god's birth and life experiences, but would set a limit on his life. The summer night wind still carried a bit of cold. One white fox suddenly shivered and said in a low voice, "Why am I a bit worried? Feeling like this might cause trouble." The fox next to her glared and scolded. "What's there to be afraid of? Are you going to be a concubine for that profligate young master from the city lord's mansion?" "I don't want to. He looks so disgusting. Mainly because he bullies too much. We must kill him, and once that guy comes back, we'll pass on his martial arts to him." "It can only be so." The voices of the 3 white foxes gradually quieted down, and eventually the woods fell into a silent, oppressive, and terrifying stillness. Sand filled the sky, and on a cliff, Zhang Buku with all white hair stood at the edge, shirtless, looking down at the blood lake below. His upper body was muscular, full of power, with blood streaks twisting, making him look even more terrifying. A Buddha head flew out from the sand. It was the Buddha Immortal. Buddha Immortal looked at Zhang Buku, his stone face showing a complicated expression. He was forced to teach Zhang Buku to cultivate, but he hadn't expected Zhang Buku to be so suited to his Tao, far exceeding his expectations. If he could really possess Zhang Buku, maybe he could surpass this life in the next one. Just thinking about it made him regret. Of course, even with several more courage, he wouldn't dare act recklessly. Just the thought of how Guwen felt pressing down on his head made him shiver in fear. Zhang Buku turned to look at the Buddha Immortal and asked, "Where is the realm master of the divine exotic realm now?" Buddha Immortal replied, "According to your wish, I have sent him to one great thousand world, and he is now very safe. If I find out you've deceived me, this favor will turn into hatred. Rest assured, since I've already done this much, why would I kill him? He's in Atei's great world. Once your cultivation ends, I will send you to that great world. There, the opportunities are abundant, and the control of the immortal gods is weak. It's a perfect place for your growth." The Buddha Immortal didn't take offense to Zhang Buku's rudeness and replied calmly. Thousands of years had passed, and he had now shifted his mindset, beginning to look forward to Zhang Buku's future. Zhang Buku had such a powerful being behind him, yet they hoped he would mentor Zhang Buku, seeing it as an opportunity. No matter how high his realm might be, one always needed a backing. Should the celestial court discover him one day, perhaps he could rely on the existence behind Zhang Buku. Hearing the Buddha Immortal's answer, Zhang Buku asked no more. After cultivating in this realm for so many years, his heart had also calmed down. Rather than dwelling on calculations he couldn't resist, it was better to grasp the time and diligently cultivate. He raised his right hand, and a bloody wind emerged from his palm, forming a small vortex. In an instant, the yellow sand from the sky rushed over, and his right hand rose higher until a yellow sand tornado appeared on his palm, becoming increasingly spectacular. The Buddha Immortal asked in surprise, "You can already feel the force of heaven and earth in this realm?" "Indeed, it doesn't seem difficult." "I'm curious, can I use the control over the force of heaven and earth in other great worlds?" Zhang Buku replied. The Buddha Immortal smiled and said, "Naturally, the great world I opened is not weak. Moreover, this realm has existed for an incredibly long time. If you can control this realm, you could use the force of heaven and earth in other great worlds." Upon hearing this, Zhang Buku's mouth curled into an almost arrogant smile. At that moment, he thought of Master Gu and Leah. During the long years of cultivation, he often thought of these two people, relying on the remembrance of old friends to recall where he came from and where he would go in the future. "Master Gu, Leah, you can't imagine how strong I've become now. I really hope to let you witness my growth." Zhang Buku was surging with emotions, growing stronger, gaining more and more confidence. If Master Gu and Liya were already dead, Zhang Buku would also go to seek them through reincarnation. Isn't immortal cultivation all about pursuing one's desires? What he desired was to enjoy drinks and travel the universe with Master Gu and Liya. The Buddha Immortal looked at the tornado in Zhang Buku's hand and thought of another person, wondering if Zhang Buku would ever have the chance to compete with that individual. Buddha Immortal, how much longer until I can leave? Don't rush. I have one more divine skill to teach you. Once you master it, you can leave. Oh, what is this divine skill? It will allow you to travel through the 3,000 great worlds, wandering freely along the river of Great Tao. If that's really possible, then I must visit the river of destiny you mentioned. Hearing Zhang Buku bring up the river of destiny, the Buddha Immortal smiled and said, "If you go to the river of destiny, you must be wary of one person. Ia the Oval Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Who? That person's name is Lu Qiuxian. His Tao practice is profound and unfathomable. He will find everyone who enters the river of destiny and ask them some questions. You must not offend him. Lu Qiuxian." Zhang Buku noted the name, recognizing that this was a presence that even the Buddha Immortal feared and not someone he could provoke. 100 years had passed since Xiao Wu's resurrection. Guan hadn't visited him, only occasionally glancing at him. This year, the name of Liya had once again spread within the Nine-Spirit continent. Liya and the Saint of the Shaking Light Saint sect had arranged a life-and-death duel at the human world peak to settle their karma. The day of the duel had not yet arrived, but the news had spread wildly. In today's vast celestial spirit great world, albeit within the domain formerly belonging to the celestial spirit Great Earth, both Liya and the Saint from Shaking Light Saint sect were world-renowned prodigies. I didn't expect Liya to gain such popularity. It seems the world is just SOSO. Back in the day, Liya had no power to fight back against me. LVCN was boasting about his past accomplishments within Shengtian, Jiangshi, Chunchuan, Celestial Cyan, and Tian by listening. Having cultivated in the Taoist field of the beginningless for so many years, their cultivation levels had reached loose immortal, and with the divine skills and spells they possessed, they were full of confidence, feeling that no peer cultivator from the outside world could match them. Tian by tilted his head and said, "Liya has the #1 divine sword in the world. Even if your cultivation level is higher than his, I'm afraid he's not someone you can defeat." LVCN glared and said, "Relying on a magical treasure doesn't make a hero. I only believe in my physical body." Just then, an Xian appeared out of nowhere and said, "Think about what kind of magical treasure you all want. Master is preparing to craft magical treasures for everyone." Upon hearing this, everyone looked at LVCN. LVCN's face turned red, and he coughed falsely. "Why are you looking at me? I've already had ideas." Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Guan could tell that everyone in the dojo possessed the ability to fight beyond their realms, but he chose not to elaborate. With a heaven-balancing golden immortal as a teacher, such achievements were to be expected. While the celestial demon child was still assimilating memories, Guan turned and looked into the distance, mumbling to himself, still refusing to give up. "Huh?" Hearing his words, an Xian asked curiously, "Master, who are you talking about?" "Tang Kai." Hundreds of years ago, unable to resist, Tang Kai had gone to find Liya, even calling out to her in the woods outside the dojo and bidding her farewell before she departed. Guan smiled and said, "Not her. I'm talking about a little demon you've never met." Seeing that he was reluctant to elaborate, an Xant didn't press further. In her view, her master, who often went out, must have spread opportunities far and wide, wondering when the Taoist field of the beginningless would gain new people. Time continued to speed up with her thoughts. The news of the celestial demon child receiving a Tao treasure quickly stirred up the dojo. Then, the age-colored cloud silk enveloped the entire sky of the dojo, suppressing all within, immobilizing them, which drove everyone, including an Xian, insane. An Xian even felt that the age-colored cloud silk was second only to her master's fate pen and power. How could she not be excited? Guan maintained a Tao treasure every 1,000 years. The second to receive a Tao treasure was Shun Jun, and her Tao treasure was called the Void Rebirth Zither, whose strings could shake destiny, causality, and even reincarnation quite domineeringly. Next was the Blood Prison Great Saint, who received a saber named the Heaven-Breaking Blood Prison Saber, which contained the great Tao of slaughter and hinted at ruling the laws of destruction. Jiangshi received the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber, another Tao treasure for slaying and fighting, reminding him of the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber from the Investiture of the Gods, which he liked very much. Celestial Cyan received the Cyan Hong Linglong Tower, and Tian Bai received the White Spirit Exquisite Tower, both Tao treasures not inferior to the others. Together, their might was even greater, named after Yilan's White Spirit Sword and Gu An's Cyan Hong Sword. And Shantian received the Shaking God Spear, its essence filled with fighting will, second only to the Heaven-Breaking Blood Prison Saber in terms of killing power. Qin Xuan got the Reincarnation Tao-Slaying Sword, able to comprehend the path of reincarnation. Guan hoped he could remember his past life on his own. LVCN received the 12 Extreme Heaven Calming World Bead, 12 silver beads that could each create or devour worlds, encapsulating the path of devouring. And XIN got the 6 Paths Mirror, which could reflect reincarnation and send others into it. During the process of refining Tao treasures, Guan also pondered these great Tao. The 3,000 great Tao are omnipresent, and the Taoist Dominator skill could assist Guan in his contemplation directly. These Tao treasures all had the power to surpass Immortal Path ultimate treasures and would continue to grow stronger with their owners' achievements in the great Tao, their limits unfathomable. At the very least, these Tao treasures were stronger than the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword in Li Ya's hands. A Tao treasure every 1,000 years, except for the Ghost Mother of Ephemera. Everyone received a Tao treasure, indicating 9,000 years had passed. Guan, now over 20,000 years old, possessed a lifespan of over 340 billion years. The sunlight spilled down as everyone surrounded an Exine, inquiring about her 6 Paths Mirror, her face full of excited smiles. Finally done with work, it's time to make a breakthrough. Guan thought to himself silently. Looking back on the 9,000 years that had passed, even he couldn't help but marvel at how swiftly time had flown. As there were no external threats, these 9,000 years were uneventful, a repetition of days. From refining the age-colored cloud silk, Guan spent 10,000 years crafting Tao treasures for his disciples, and through this process, he continued his cultivation. 10,000 years later, even without using lifespan evolution, his power had significantly improved. Master, aside from you, is there anyone else who can refine Tao treasures? Qin Xuan looked at Guan, asking curiously. Holding the reincarnation Tao-Slaying Sword, even after 2,000 years, he was still enamored with it. The others followed suit. Looking at Guan, Guan smiled and said, "Perhaps there are others, but your Tao treasures were forged with my great Tao. In the future, I could help strengthen your Tao treasures and even use them to connect with you." At those words, everyone became even more excited, which meant they could rely on Guan any time, even if they went out in the future, couldn't they? Master, why not establish a sect? There's no need to recruit many disciples, but at least we could set a banner. In the future, when we introduce ourselves, we can declare which immortal sect we belong to and also add luster to your reputation. Blood Prison Great Saint suddenly suggested, with the others echoing him. This was a plan they had long discussed, and were waiting for the right moment to propose. Guin had already heard their discussions over the years and had also been contemplating this matter. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Seeing her not keeping a stern face, the others also smiled and actively discussed the power of the Tao treasures. Though an Xin was of the same generation as them, she had unconsciously established great prestige, and everyone knew Gu and doted on her the most. Even Shunjun would not act too willfully in front of an Xin. The ghost mother of ephemera stood at the back of the crowd with a fiery heart. Although she had not obtained a Tao treasure, she felt this was as it should be, given she was not Gu An's disciple and had entered the Taoist field of the beginningless as a prisoner. Guin summoning her was clearly a signal. She wanted a Tao treasure too. Perhaps I shouldn't be methodically completing my tasks. I should be more proactive. The master likes to pick medicinal herbs. Why not find a way to increase the production of medicinal herbs? The ghost mother of ephemera thought so as she looked at the people around her. In the reshaped great thousand world that had seen 10,000 years pass, the human world had taken on a new appearance. The holy court had completely dissolved, and now the war of thousand sects was raging, with no sect showing the dominance to unify the world, for the heavens and earth had become more vast than before. Despite the multitude of sects, this period had gained a unified definition. The primordial era. A new great thousand world was established, where the heavens met the earth and all things bloomed anew. Such a time was known as the primordial, the beginning of everything. The sects that had survived the previous era and made it to the primordial era had all become overlord-level forces. The Supreme Sect was one such power. Now, the Supreme Sect dominated the 7 seas and the 3 continents, its influence surpassing even that of the 7-star spirit realm and the star sea congregations of old times. In the 3rd Medicine Valley, which 10,000 years later still held its esteemed position because the sect leader resided in this Medicine Valley. Inside a bamboo forest in the valley, Long Qing, wearing a loose white robe, sat cross-legged on the ground. With unruly hair, he had left his youthful features behind, becoming more composed and unfathomable, looking like a true enlightened being amid the forest. A figure appeared out of nowhere before him. It was Candlestar from the battle court. This reshaped great thousand world seems less like it has been reconstructed and more like reborn. Many heaven and earth ultimate treasures have emerged between the heavens and earth. Over the years, I have fought over them as well. I didn't expect to encounter the blockade of profound Yuan-free Immortal. Those old, undying beings hidden in the depths of the universe have all returned. Candlestar sighed. Clashing swords with profound Yuan-free Immortal made me fully realize that this world has truly become a part of the Great Thousand World. Just like the other vast worlds I've been to, there's always trouble brewing. He had taken on many disciples over 10,000 years, but as the sect leader, he always considered the disciples of the Supreme Sect more, hoping his own disciples could bear more since they had enjoyed more of the Supreme Sect's resources. The return of Yi Tsong did not alarm Long Qing. It merely made him miss his master. You have initiated the lifespan breakthrough function based on your current realm. You have been offered the following breakthrough locations. 1. Celestial Extreme, 9 Heavens. 2. Ascending to Yellow Heaven. 3. Taiwei Earth Core. 4. Netherworld Deep Sea. 5. Desperate Celestial Tomb. 6. Path of the Great Tao. 7. Azura Abyss. Misty Immortal Court. 9. Ling Mountain. Many of these places had appeared before. This time, Guin directly ruled out Celestial. Extreme, 9 Heavens. He carefully pondered these names, and he was very interested in Ling Mountain. In Huaxiao mythology, Ling Mountain was the Buddhist sect's dojo. Now that Celestial Court had appeared, he was not sure if this Ling Mountain was the same as the one in the mythology. Despite his curiosity, Guan did not want to go to Ling Mountain. He vaguely felt that the waters of Ling Mountain were very deep. Other places looked very expansive, while Ling Mountain seemed like just one mountain. Even though the lifespan breakthrough transfer locations are temporarily safe, he did not want to risk it. For him, the bigger the better for breakthrough locations, so even if anomalies were created, no one would intrude into the lifespan barrier. Thinking it over, Guan decided to go to the desperate celestial tomb. There should be no powerful beings in the tomb, or if there were, they would be sealed. Also, for some reason, seeing the desperate celestial tomb, Guan felt a connection to this place. Transporting to desperate celestial tomb will consume 10 billion years of lifespan. Do you wish to continue? Continue. The thought had just arisen when an unusual state that he had not felt in a long time enveloped Guan. He closed his eyes, losing all senses. After a while, Guan felt his feet touch the ground. He immediately initiated the lifespan barrier, and then opened his eyes. What entered his eyes were a series of ruined palaces, and ancient stone pillars towering into the clouds, the ground undulating unevenly, no flowers or grass in sight, only yellow soil and rocks, with the far-off dust swirling into the sky, making the end of the scene indistinct. Vast and desolate. This was Guan's first impression. The Tao spiritual qi here was very dense, even denser than in the celestial extreme 9 heavens. But the aura of the Tao here was not as abundant, with the path of cause and effect being particularly outstanding. This was actually good for Guan. Even though he had begun to explore other paths of the Tao, the path of cause and effect was still his main focus. Looking around, Guan did not feel the presence of any living beings. The desperate celestial tomb was bigger than he had anticipated, endless to his heart-eyes sight. He was curious whether the whole world was inside the celestial tomb, or if this place was hiding it. He sat down on the spot and pulled up his attribute panel to check. Name: Guan. Lifespan: 2587/338, 542, 709, 068. Physique: primordial reincarnation, undying body. Cultivation level: balancing heaven, golden, immortal realm perfection. Over 330 billion years of lifespan. This time, he would surely succeed in breaking through. Guan was filled with confidence. The last time he broke through, each crossing the tribulation had to wait 100 million years. Now that he had improved in all aspects, the waiting time needed for crossing the tribulation should not increase by many times. He immediately invested 10 billion years of lifespan into his cultivation level. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 200 million years. You forcefully assaulted the Tai-Ching golden immortal realm using your great achievement with the Taoist dominator skill. Started crossing the tribulation, but you did not endure the 3,000 golden immortal breaking Tao tribulations. Crossing the tribulation failed. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 400 million years. You forcefully assaulted the Tai-Ching golden immortal realm using your great achievement with the Taoist dominator skill. Started crossing the tribulation, but you did not endure the 3,000 golden immortal breaking Tao tribulations. Crossing the tribulation failed. It was indeed the Tai-Ching golden immortal. Once every 200 million years for a crossing the tribulation. Not bad. In reality, a failed tribulation could mean severe injuries or even annihilation. Being able to restore cultivation level and condition within 200 million years at this level was rare. Quickly, the 10 billion years of lifespan were exhausted, all efforts ending in failure. Guan was not panicked at all. This was just the beginning. Another 10 billion years of lifespan. One notification after another popped up, but Guan's attention was drawn to a huge palace in the distance. That massive palace was over 1 million miles away from him. Compared to the surrounding structures, it was exceptionally magnificent. The gates alone were over 10,000 zhang high. For a moment earlier, Guin felt a faint and eerie presence from that palace that disappeared quickly, as if it was his imagination. It seemed that this desperate celestial tomb hid secrets. After all the prompts on his panel disappeared, Guin continued to invest 10 billion years of lifespan. Failure. Invest again. Failure. Invest again. Finally, success. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 5,900,000,000 years. You forcefully assaulted the Tai Ching Golden Immortal realm using your great achievement with the Taoist Dominator skill. Started crossing the tribulation. You endured the 3,000 Golden Immortal breaking Tao tribulations. Crossing the tribulation succeeded. Your cultivation level broke through to the early stage of Tai Ching Golden Immortal realm. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 100 billion years. Your cultivation level improved. A massive amount of Tao spiritual qi immediately surged towards Guin. He didn't stop but continued to invest lifespan. The lifespan required to move from the early stage to the mid-stage of the Tai Ching Golden Immortal realm far exceeded his imagination, costing him 200 billion years of lifespan. That was truly frightening. However, thinking of the Nine Heavens Cyan bird who was only in the early stage of Tai Ching Golden Immortal realm despite being over 200 billion years old, he felt more at ease. After all, this was the Tai Ching Golden Immortal, a realm unimaginable to the beings of the celestial spirit great world. He continued to invest lifespan until his cultivation level reached the perfection of Tai Ching Golden Immortal realm. From early stage to perfection, he'd spent nearly 100 billion years of lifespan altogether, and he still had over 1.8 billion years of lifespan left. Meanwhile, anomalies began to appear in the desperate celestial tomb. Tao spiritual qi surged from all directions, forming devastating tornadoes, and runes appeared intermittently in the sky, akin to thunder, oppressively intense. Guin turned his gaze back to the distant huge palace. That trace of eerie presence he had caught earlier reappeared, his eyes intently focused on that half-open giant door, behind which was darkness, ominously severe. After a while, as Guin basked in the luminance of the great Tao, he squinted because he saw a figure walking out from that door. The figure was as large as an ordinary person, seeming minuscule like dust within the doorway. From its shape, it seemed to be a person. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.